Hello, everyone. This is episode 8 of the Stronghold podcast, and I'm here with Major Overall. He's a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt, and he's the head coach of Team Highlight Reel here in Singapore. He's an old friend. What's up, dude?
Not much, man. What's going on?
Ready to do some podcasting?
Let's do it, bro.
I know as soon as I started this podcast, I had to get you on immediately because even back in the old days when we were both fighting and more fit than we are now and drank less than we do now, we would just talk and talk and talk, and it would always be about fighting and training. And, you know, when you get people who really know their shit, you can go on for hours about just talking about minute details and the training and stuff. So I knew straight away you were a guy I had to get on the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. And I was thinking, like, even some of those conversations, like, dude, why didn't we record this?
I know.
Like, people need to know this, you know? Like, people would enjoy this information, you know?
Especially the people within the scene.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And it's really interesting, man, watching you specifically over the years because, you know, when we first met, I was a coach at Trifecta and you were a coach at Juggernaut.
Yeah.
And then since then, I've seen you open up your gym and I've seen your gym expand and you're doing really well. You've done really well for yourself. So to see you go from that role to then opening your own place and watching you get your black belt, and then from the days where, you know, we're training together and then cornering you in fights, and then now you run your own academy and you're cornering people, and the whole process from when we met to where we are now, and then we also opened up our own gym. It's just fucking cool, man.
Yeah, it's cool.
You know, we started low,
yeah,
and then it feels like even though it's a struggle that we're working our way up, and I feel like we're at the same spot throughout going through this process, right? We were purple belts at the same time.
Yeah.
We were brown belts at the same time. We opened up a gym within a year-ish of each other. So it's pretty fucking cool, man. You're a dude that's been there with me. So
Yeah.
I really enjoy watching your success and seeing what you're doing. So for sure, I had to talk to you.
That's awesome, man. Yeah.
So how's it, man? You're in your second location now? Third?
Yeah, I just moved around the corner, so got a little bit bigger of a place. I wanted to have 2 floors because I feel like I was starting to feel like it would make more sense to have like a specialized room for each thing, you know, like a grappling room. I wanted to keep the walls padded, but I wanted to have heavy bags at the same time. So I was like maybe I could do 2 rooms and run concurrent classes. And so that's what I've been doing like the last year. We moved like maybe a year ago, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been to your new spot since you moved because I've only been back in Singapore for 6 months or something like that. So I haven't got to check out your new spot. But even your old place, dude, it just like dripped your style, which I always like. Because one thing I really related to you as well is that I always felt you were kind of offbeat, which I really liked, like your sense of humor and just the way that you talk about shit. And then when I walked into your gym, I could just see it. I could see it in the gym. I went to your gym and we did some questionable activities that can't be mentioned in public. But let's just say we had a good time.
Yeah.
And as soon as I walked in, it just had your personality, which as I get into gym ownership, I start to realize that those things that make you unique start to be your selling point. And right when I walked in the gym, I could just see that, like, this is Major's place.
I can see that here too. Like your place, this is very much, and it's funny because I think we have like a lot of the same idiosyncrasies. Like the sign that you have right there about the sugary drinks. I was like, dude, this is my boy right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Like no sugary drinks, they attract ants. Like you have a sign.
That's how you get ants.
That says that. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I told Charmaine she just needs to put a picture of Archer. It's that Archer meme. That's how you get ants.
That's how you get ants.
You
Yeah.
just need to post it up there. But yeah, and we got this big fucking image. You know, this everybody asks me about this because it looks kind of ridiculous about the mural in the back. And basically, we just paid an artist to do some kind of martial arts logo. We told him the name of the gym, and we said we wanted it to be martial arts inspired, and that we wanted it to attract kids because you know, I mean, we're in Horse City. It's just families and kids walking by here, and that's our key demographic, especially being in this area. Is that, you know, it's like most of our customers are dads and their kids training, or the moms and the kids, and the dads will come in and train after the kids, and they'll just like sit there and play video games and shit. And you know, this is basically just Ryu inspired Street Fighter art, right? That some dude spray painted on the thing. So yeah, we just wanted something kind of weird, something offbeat, something that the kids would be attracted to, and yeah, I always feel like we have that connection.
Yeah, I think what's more important, like especially with, you know, like people walking by, like foot traffic and stuff like that. You don't have to necessarily be full-on MMA or full-on jiu-jitsu or full-on whatever. As long as what you have in the window makes them say, hey, what's that? Then you've got a curious person, you know, you've got a potential person to walk in the door.
Yeah, even you know, I was having this conversation with you earlier, like, there's a lot of gyms in Singapore. Yeah. There's a lot of places that you can go to train. The market here is pretty well saturated, I would say. I mean, especially now. Compared to when we started doing martial arts in Singapore, back when we were purple belts and early brown belts and all that kind of shit, the game has changed. Like, do you remember going to the Southeast Asian grappling events, like when you were at Juggernaut and I was at Trifecta, and the list of gyms was like 7. or 8. It's
Yeah.
like everybody came from these few gyms. It's like Juggernaut, Trifecta, Evolve, Singapore BJJ, Fight G. I'm getting pretty close to maxing out the list. Impact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty close, right?
That's about it.
There
yeah.
might be a couple more like
Yeah.
random ones that I'm forgetting, but that was about it. Now you go to these tournaments, and there's 3 or 4 new gyms every single time that I go.
Seems to be, right?
I
Seems
can't even keep track of it.
Yeah.
There's just so many gyms.
But I feel like there's even more gyms than the gyms that have competitors. That's just a small subsect of gyms. Now there's like a bunch of gyms. Maybe they have a jiu-jitsu class twice a week, and it's a Krav Maga gym, or it's an Aikido gym, and they have a jiu-jitsu class, or it's a judo gym, and they have a jiu-jitsu class once a week, or something like that. There's probably, I mean, if you count in those gyms, there's probably 100 gyms
There's
in the
a
country.
boxing gym in Sembawang that just started doing jiu-jitsu classes.
It's trendy.
Yeah.
It's trendy, yeah.
And yeah, you get those like, well, do you do class pass?
Yeah.
Is that something you do?
Yeah.
So we get those class pass people all the time, and it's kind of annoying because, like, I mean, it's cool because it gets people in the door,
Mm-hmm.
but all of those people just train at a bunch of different places. They kind of just,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's a good technology to have because some people will just be in another part of town and they want to get a workout in, so they want to drop into some gym and they just click it on class pass or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. But the problem with that is then they don't have a consistent instructor. So I
Right.
get some of these people that do class pass, and I'm like, where have you trained? And they're like, oh, I did a class at Impact, and I did a class at Evolve, and then I did a class here, and I did a class here, and then I went there, and I'm like, and? Like, why? He's like, oh, because I'm going here, and then I'm going there, and I'm like, you haven't found one place that you just kind of want to train at? Because I feel like you miss a little bit of the whole thing if you don't have an instructor to teach you.
Well, see, but they don't know what they're missing.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
They don't. They might as well be doing like yoga classes at random studios off of Groupon, right? For their experience, they're not really taking in the whole thing. I think it really takes like a few months to feel that camaraderie of a team, to feel that relationship between you and a coach, to feel that kind of growth that you get when you have a family, like a second family like that, and that camaraderie. You know what I mean? Like of just the whole thing coming together. But
Yeah.
if you're just popping in and out, you'll never know, I guess.
Well, I tell everybody that, you know, the skills pay the bills, right? The skills are what get people in the door.
Right.
So people want to train. They want to do jiu-jitsu. They want to do Muay Thai, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
That's what gets them in the door. But the community is what gets them to stay.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
if you don't have that solid community, that reinforcing thing. I mean, I'm at us, right? We've done jiu-jitsu. I've done for 15 years. I started when I was
same.
16, right? That's when I did my first jiu-jitsu class, and I wrestled before that. If I think to how do you maintain training for 15 years and even longer, if you want to train your whole life, if you want to make it an actual lifestyle, without a good community, it's just not going to happen. There is no way the pure interest of the skill alone is going to get you through years of grindy training where you don't want to come in, you got this thing, this work sucks, your boss is yelling at you, you didn't want to come in that day, you got injured. After your injury, you don't know if you want to come back because you're nervous. If you don't have those extenuating circumstances, that extended family, those people that you know are training, and that sucks you back in, and that brings you in through the anxiety and the stress and the injuries and life. And I feel like if you don't have a good, solid community, it's very hard for the average person to maintain that over a lifetime.
Yeah, but you know what? A lot of times you move around, you move places and everything. I think the lifestyle is what kind of keeps you around. I mean, maybe like for those first 2 belts, you know, white, blue, maybe even into purple, having a group of friends around is what keeps you coming back. But then I think even if you were to leave wherever you are and move across the world, you know, like when I travel, I go to Europe, right? Sometimes I'll stop in a gym and I've got friends instantly. We don't even have to speak the same language. We can communicate through jiu-jitsu. And they're going to invite me out for food. We may not be able to talk to each other, but we'll enjoy each other's company. You know what I mean? They'll know that I'm a nice guy because I didn't crank the armbar or whatever. You know, I wasn't going too hard or something like that. We can communicate without having to even speak. But yeah, I think that's probably definitely what keeps people over the longest of long term. You know, for guys like us, like we're not with the same people we started with, obviously, right? We're on the other side of the world, but we're still doing it. Why? Because of the lifestyle. We make friends through this. I made friends with you through this. I saw you at an open mat one day, and I was like, dude, I like rolling with you. Let's do it some more, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and we've been like best friends ever since, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. It's the
Well,
lifestyle.
I would make an argument that's the community.
Yeah.
It's the broader sense of the
Yeah,
community,
yeah, the
not
broader
the
sense.
specific sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, a lot of people don't even know this about me because ever since when I came to Singapore, I was a teacher, and then I trained at Evolve and stuff, and then after that, I started working back in martial arts. But before this, I went to school. I was an actor. And that was what I did for school. That's what I studied in, like degrees in drama. Like, and you know, I went to a New York Film Academy essentially, right? And the reason that I didn't stick with that wasn't because I didn't find the work interesting, was because the community was just so different than what I liked. It was just so self-serving. The people were generally pretentious. Like, it didn't mean that there weren't cool people within that community, but it was the overall community that I felt was just very self-serving, and all of the problems were so surface-central that it just drove me crazy. And even though I think like a home gym is important, it's, in my experience, the broad martial arts community that's always fucking cool. If I go, same thing. If I go to Europe, if I go to America, if I want to find friends, I go to the jiu-jitsu gym.
Right away, yeah.
Because everywhere you go, those people are fucking cool, generally speaking.
Yeah.
So it's not the local community, but it's the broad global community that I find the coolest people are training martial arts. Because they have cool jobs, and they're nice, and they're struggling, right? That's their hobby. They're coming in after working 8 hours a day. They've got maybe a couple kids and a wife at home that doesn't want them to be there. And, it's easy to get sucked in and go home. But they're here sweating and getting armbarred and choked and shit in their free time. And the people that are willing to do that on the large scale are generally fucking cool people,
Yeah. People who can swallow their ego every day, get choked out by a 40-kilo girl.
Yeah, in their spare time.
Right? In their spare time,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Maybe they're a CEO at some company, but they come in here and get choked out by some 18-year-old student.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah, but then how'd you do that, right?
Yeah.
The people who say, how'd you do that?
Those are the keepers.
Yeah, those are the keepers. Those are the ones who stay around. And those are the ones worth keeping around, right?
Yeah, and then you get into the point where your experience over time will lead to, like, friends like you and me, right?
Yeah.
Listen, if you can sit there and just geek out hardcore about martial arts with someone for 2 hours, that's a cool friend. Like,
yeah, for
you're
sure.
Just like, I see it all the time. Like, a lot of times I'll do class, and then, I want to go home because I'm here 7 days a week, and it'll be like 2:30 or 3, and we're already an hour over late, and there's 6 people that won't shut the fuck up and go home. You know what I mean? Because they're interested in the techniques that they're learning, and they're all swapping ideas. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to see. I'm kind of tongue-in-cheek when I'm saying I want to go home. That's for sure a fact and happens. But a deeper part of me is, like, happy that they're so interested that they're staying an hour after class is finished, and they're just showing each other shit and be like, no, you can't do this, and this is how you do this arm bar, and have you seen this technique? And that's cool.
That's where I feel like people really improve too, is when they're intrinsically motivated to learn. It's not just like being lazy and showing up and just kind of like half-ass doing whatever you're showing that day, but when they're really kind of like taking it upon themselves, they're asking questions, they're staying after, they're feeding off of each other, that's where I feel like people really make big jumps.
Yeah, because I always say that, like, people will ask you how to do techniques and they want to memorize them.
Yeah.
But memorization is the lowest form of understanding.
Yeah.
Like, if you just memorize it, it's not quite the same as, like you're saying, that organic interest and feel of doing it. And if you get sucked into, if you find a hobby that the time melts away, and in your spare time when you would normally be home doing it, you're just, all of a sudden, you teleport to an hour later and you realize that you've been talking about how to do an arm bar or showing this technique, and that time's gone by and you don't even realize it happened. That's good shit.
Yeah.
That's good shit.
That's when they're...
You hit the flow state.
Yeah.
Right? You just, boom, you pop into the flow state, time, like, just constricts and dilates and you can't even keep track of it, and then all of a sudden you've been in the gym for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
That's the goal for me, is just that gym time.
I think it's also like a good outlet for a lot of these kids. I think they're still like learning in school, like rote style. Like, memorize this, scantron this, regurgitate this, right? And that's how they learn, right? Or that's how they're taught. And so they have no means to express themselves. But when you have jiu-jitsu, there's no set answer. There's not like step 1, 2, 3, and 4, or A, B, and C. It's, okay, these are the concepts that work. Find your own way.
Yeah.
And they can really express their creativity through that, And that's,
Well, I like that about your students too, because a lot of your students cross-train, and I tell my students often to go train with you if they're in that part of town.
Yeah.
So, I think we both have, you teach some of my old students, I know for a fact.
Yeah.
So they used to train with me, and then some of yours come here, which is cool. Martial arts should be an open door, because I'm not a master at everything. Mm-hmm. I'm barely a master at anything. So it's like, I just do some shit that works for me, and that's cool. But I know you get a lot of students here. Like, some of your students come here and they like to play worm guard, and they like to do foot locks, and they like to do all of the, the knee bars and the heel hooks. And I like to do that stuff too. But I don't claim to be an expert in that shit. But when your students come in and they start playing that game, you go to some coaches, they might tell you, hey, this doesn't work. Hey, this is not our style. Hey, this is not this or this or this. But just because maybe I'm not a master at those techniques doesn't mean they're not cool. Everybody's style is different. Everybody's motivated by, they think other stuff is cool. And I always like that about your students too, is you see a wide variety of techniques. You don't tell them what they can and can't do, where they can and can't go. I mean, you've trained with some of these Evolve kids, right?
Yeah.
That I'll do an open mat at the gym. Really cool kids will come in. I mean, I trained at Evolve for 2 years. I think it should just be an open door policy, right? But then I'll get some kids to come in to train, and they'll sit here and train. They'll have a great time, but then they won't be in the picture. Because they don't want Evolve to see that they were training at another gym. It can just be an open mat on a weekend on a public holiday or something, and they'll be like, no, I can't be in the picture. Because they don't want, I don't know.
I've been at several open mats where that's been the case.
It's fucking creepy, right?
Yeah,
when that happens. And it's just one of those things that you're like, dude, people don't own you. Like, it's good to train. It's good to go out. It doesn't mean that you're going to leave your gym, or no one's trying to poach your students. Like, it's just, it should be an open door. Like, go here, train with these people, go there, go do that. And I see that, and it's a little disappointing.
It is what it is, though.
By the way, Major and I have easily 20 beers sitting over here in this cooler. So we got some work to do. I've already been drinking for an hour or two. So
got some catching up to do then.
So needless to say, this podcast might get a little sloppy.
Yeah.
You were just coming from a competition, right?
Yeah, we did. What was it? The Bushido competition? Man, I'm at a competition literally every weekend. I was at a competition last weekend.
Where's the Bushido tournament?
Bushido is, they do it at Budok. Or at least that's where they did it today and the last time. So it's gi and no gi. Today was the no gi day. It was kind of a small turnout, but it was good. Honestly, man, that tournament's like...
Small tournaments are better than the huge ones that have hundreds of people.
The efficiency of it, though. Like, I've been to small tournaments where you're there all day. Like, bro, I was out of there by, 1 o'clock today.
Was it white through purple, or?
Oh, man, there were black belts there.
Really?
Yeah, there were black belts, brown belts. So
Who organized it?
It was the Sheridans.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, they're doing their own tournaments.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it's mostly, if I'm not mistaken, from what the parents tell me, it's mostly Simone and what's the daughter's name? Ellie. They do most of the operation stuff, and then the parents just kind of advise them and help them out here and there. But that's really their gig, and they do a really good job.
So they had white through black competitors?
Yeah. So the way they set it up, it was basically like beginner, intermediate, advanced. So for the most part, your beginner guys are the white belts, your intermediates are the blue belts, and then purple through black, your advanced guys. But pretty good. Did
you referee, or are you just there coaching?
Nah, I was just there coaching. Yeah.
Who's refereeing?
It was that guy Tukum. He was over there. No, he wasn't refereeing. Sorry, he was scorekeeping. They had that. I think they bring in refs from overseas to keep it more impartial. They had that.
No, that's good.
What's that fella's name? George.
I don't know.
Tall Brazilian fella.
Oh, I think I do know who you're talking about.
Right. Yeah.
And then, so that was this week. And then, what's the WLC? You were talking to me before the podcast, the shirt you're wearing.
Oh, yeah.
You can shout it out.
World Lethwei Championship. Shout out to World Lethwei Championship. Yeah. So that's another thing. That's one of my other side hustles, I guess. No, one of my other hobbies.
Headbutts, dude.
Headbutts, bro. It's
Headbutts
awesome.
is your side hustle, man.
Yeah. Headbutts are my side hustle.
Martial arts knows no limit.
Yeah. So what that is basically like Muay Thai. It's a style of Indo-Chinese kickboxing, a traditional style, right? But it's bare-knuckle, so I'm on board with that. Less punches to the head, I guess. And there's headbutts, but there's also slams, suplexes, in fact.
Really?
Yeah. And
I didn't know that.
And in the first fight, I was watching the last event. The first fight, I was just judging that one, so I ref and judge. The first fight I was judging, the guy gets picked up, gets the body lock, hips in, spikes the guy in the head, knockout. First fight of the night, knockout by slam.
Shit.
Yeah, so they have...
It's like a bit of combination of almost like Sanda and Muay Thai and head, because if you can headbutt and suplex, I assume you can trip and everything too?
It's Vale Tudo. It's Vale Tudo
minus
without...
the ground fighting.
Minus the ground fighting, yeah. Vale Tudo minus the ground fighting. So, I mean, you can strike the back of the head even.
Really?
Yeah, you can strike the back of the head.
You can just headbutt right in the fucking nose.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so
brain on brain. That's what I said before. Brain on brain
action.
action.
Keeps people honest, bro. Is what
Hell yeah, it does.
Yeah, like you can't really your Thai clinch doesn't really work the same when people can slide up and headbutt you.
Even your punches, like that old school boxing block where people punch for the chin, you just drop your forehead.
Oh, where you're blading like that?
Yeah, you'll break your hand if you try to punch the forehead. And if you're not wearing a glove and you're aiming for the chin or the nose and you just drop your head down and you catch that right in the skull, you easily break your hand.
You know what happens?
And then you have to end up headbutting.
Yeah, this is all you got left.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. You know what happens though is the guys end up being much better at punching than they are at kicking.
Which is not practical for...
Well, no.
As practical.
No, because punches can slide through. Yeah. The thing about Muay
That's
Thai,
true.
They're not as good at punching because they don't have to be. Like there's no... They don't score well. If you punch, it doesn't score well. If you punch, you're leaving yourself open to be clinched, be parried and elbowed, countered. It's hard to get into that range. Plus, it's the only thing on your body padded.
Yeah.
Right. So why would you bother with it? Just kick, and if you get close, you clinch and throw elbows. But with this one, it's like, okay, we're not wearing gloves. Everything slides through, just like in MMA.
Do they palm strike at all, or is it all? Do they still close fist?
No, it's all close fist.
Do they wear the knuckle wrap?
Yeah, so there's like a little bit of gauze there, but that's about it. Nothing crazy protecting.
It's so insane, dude. We were talking about this just before, and listen, I'm not opposed to any of this shit, but the thing that freaks me out that I see is the knockout rule. Where, like in the traditional Lethwei, you get 3 minutes after you get knocked. Because my beef with boxing is that it is more damaging to you long term. Because if I drop you and you get knocked, even if you're concussed, you get 10 seconds to shake that shit off, wake up, and then get concussed more. And those post-concussive blows, I think, are the most dangerous when it comes to CTE and things like that. And if you get 2 or 3 minutes, I mean, you can really shake the cobwebs off in 2 or 3 minutes. But those... Yeah. What is there a drop? Is there a rule, a knockdown rule? Like how many times you can do that?
Okay, so so World Lethwei is more like a global version of the sport, right? So there's the traditional rules where they have like the timeout rules, what you're talking about. So what happens is you could actually be knocked out, like all the way out, and your corner would have like 2 minutes to wake you up,
Just shake your legs, slap you in the face, and
put
get
you
going
back
again.
They put you back in the fight, right? And it's happened before. I've seen a couple of fights where like one specifically, Tutu versus Cyrus. Shout out to Cyrus, one of my old training partners. But Cyrus knocked Tutu out with like a spinning back elbow. He was sleeping, like he was licking the pavement, right?
Oh, God.
Tutu's corner picked him up, shook him off, dusted him off. He knocked Cyrus down 2 times in the 5th round, and then his corner threw in the towel. I was like, what a comeback, right? That's super, super exciting. But,
I mean, yeah.
But who wants to take that kind of... That doesn't always work out that way.
Ooh, doggy. I mean, that's a that's a trade-off, man.
That's one of the few times it works out that way. A lot of times it works out...
Exactly how you think it would.
Yeah, the other guy just takes more damage, but...
Exactly how you think it would.
WLC's done the smart move and cut that one out, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so they don't have that timeout rule. So, like, when you're out, you're out. It's over. Like,
yeah. I mean, I do think that that's one of the few things that makes MMA safer than boxing, for example, is that most of the time, like, if I drop you, even if I get you with a good shot, there's usually no more than 3 to 5 follow-up strikes that will happen, right? If I follow you to the ground, or it will lead to a submission. If you're really knocked out, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're really knocked out, you drop back, follow up a couple strikes, that's it. And I think that, that, if you think of Tyson Fury when he fought Deontay Wilder. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, that was the 12th round, and he didn't take a lot of shots after that. But imagine if that happened in the 4th. I mean, he was flatlined, eyes rolled back in his head, gets up at 9 3/4 seconds, and then could proceed to take another beating for hundreds of shots to the head.
I've heard this argument before, but I honestly believe that the main difference between... Yeah, sure. The main difference between boxing and MMA is not really the fights; it's more the training. Because
that's true.
I'm thinking like I've probably had 20 fights MMA. I've had over 20 fights MMA. Not all of them are on record, but they happened. Right? Somewhere they happened, right? And I think total ring time, I might have an hour. I might have an hour in the ring, but I've got 15 years outside of the ring in the gym with heavyweights, with welterweights, with middleweights, guys hitting me full power. And they're getting knocked out in the gym sometimes too. I never got knocked out in a fight, but I got knocked out in the gym. Yeah. So, and then we know what happens. I wake back up and I go again. So I think it's some of those old school training methods are what cause a lot of damage. And boxing is very old school.
Especially boxing.
It's very old school. It's just like there's not a lot of stuff to do. There's no grappling to take a break from the head trauma. Yeah. There's no wrestling to take a break from the head trauma. It's plus like, okay, we either punch the face or we punch the face. Like,
yeah, exactly.
That's what we do.
And even if you look at a boxing fight compared to an MMA fight, if you look at the amount of shots that are landed, I mean, in a 12-round boxing fight, I mean, you're talking hundreds, and 3/4 of them go to the head. I mean, you might find a handful of like UFC fights where hundreds of strikes are landed. I mean, absorb even less.
Right.
I mean, it's just because, like you're saying, the clinch can mitigate the amount of strikes that you can actually throw. When it goes to the ground, those grappling exchanges can mitigate the damage. And the gym wars and the training modality tends to be different for MMA and boxing. And then there might be also something to be said about the gloves. Yeah. Smaller gloves means you can't take as many hard shots. Because that same shot in a boxing glove and an MMA glove may lead to a finish, whereas the boxing glove, you just may end up taking another 100 of those. So I think the training modality is definitely different. But I saw a video of the Wild Card Gym like last week, and it was just someone got knocked the fuck out hard, like 20, 30 seconds, not moving. That was with the headgear on, like at a gym today.
MMA or boxing?
No, it was boxing at the Wild Card Gym, Freddie Roach's gym.
Oh, okay.
And that's like a modern day gym today. They were wearing headgear. Like, Dude, if that happened in my gym, if one of my students went that hard on another student, I mean, I would be borderline kick them out of the gym. If they just went full on through 100% power punch that would clearly knock someone out if they landed and drop someone for 30 seconds, I mean, that's serious damage.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know how you could justify that.
It happens in boxing gyms. I mean, I've trained boxing in regular gyms where it's like, okay, 90% of these guys are here for fitness. The 10% that are here for fighting, we'll try to cater to them, but not really so much. I've trained that way before. I've also trained in boxing gyms that are just trying to train pro boxers, and it's literally like you just fight every day.
I heard rumors about Juggernaut back in the day being like that.
What,
by rumors, I mean people that clearly trained there for a long time used to talk about the sparring at Juggernaut, which is insane.
Honestly, I didn't think it was that bad.
Really?
I mean, compared to maybe the rest of Singapore, they go pretty hard, but that's just the way boxers train, bro. Like, I've trained with boxers. Like, it wasn't fun. Like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't fun.
It was awful.
Yeah,
I had headaches for weeks.
Yeah, they had
not a big deal.
They had a lot of good guys there, so it kind of sucked. Like, but it wasn't like excessive or anything. To be honest with you, yeah. Like,
well, I mean, I still suspect it's pretty fair compared to some other places, but I just worry about that, man. I mean, you know, I'm of the mindset you can go hard to the body. Because I mean, if you leg kick somebody, they're going to limp or whatever. If you body shot somebody, you know, they might seize up if you hit them in the liver. Yeah. But that's not long-lasting damage. As long as nothing breaks, you're going to be pretty safe. But that fucking head trauma, even the boxers, like, save it for the fight. I mean, how many boxers get punchy? I would say most get punchy from the training. Like you were saying earlier, the years and years for every 200 or 300 shots absorbed in a fight, the amount absorbed in the training leading up to it, 10 times. I mean, probably more.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I remember when I was training at like with a pro boxing trainer, right? We would just do like all these circuit things and pad works and stuff, like kind of Monday through Thursday, and then every Friday was a fight. Like he'd call down some guy from out of town, and it would basically just be a fight. Like
that
every
was
Friday.
Sparring, right?
It was a sparring.
Which was a smoker essentially.
It was sparring, but it was a fight, bro. It was not light at all. Like it'd be getting dropped and stuff. And that's just the way boxing training goes, I guess.
Yeah, it has changed. Did I ever tell you the story of the first time I ever sparred?
No.
Oh, it was some dick shit, dude. But this is how it was back in the day. I try to tell my wife Charmaine all the time what MMA training was like when I started compared to now. Because the word's out now. People are starting to understand that those shots have long-lasting effects. Because MMA is such a new sport, the training modalities have really evolved a lot in the last 10 years as it's become mainstream. You know, but back when we started 15 years ago, people would just sparring day was like every fight was an amateur fight essentially. I mean, you had sometimes the headgear, the shin pads, and the fat gloves. You know, maybe they made you wear 16 ounces, but that was it, man. And if people threw full power shots. And my first time sparring ever, I was terrified, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm 18, 19 or something. I was a purple belt in Jiu Jitsu, but I hadn't done any sparring. And I'm at the Adrenaline Training Center in Canada. That's where Mark Hominick and Sam Stout trained, and they had some other UFC fighters. It was a Sean Tompkins gym, a Boss Rutan affiliate. And it was the first day, and I was going with one of the coaches. So my first round ever was with one of the coaches, so I thought I was good, right? You know, because if you come into my gym and you train with me, I'm the safest person you're ever going to train with. There's no way I'm not gonna lose control. Like, even if I head kick you, it's just I'm gonna touch you, tap you, right? I'm not gonna even throw that shot, but if I did, you're fine. Same thing. If you roll with somebody, you roll with the black belt, you're way safer than rolling with the white belt.
Right.
Like, I mean, without question, right? And so I go with and it's a boxing round. They say boxing only, right? So I'm like shitting my pants. I'm terrified because I've seen the sparring. I know what it is, and I'm really nervous. And so I kind of like throw some jabs and try to stay away. And the first strike this fucking dude throws at me is such an asshole. He gets me in a tie clinch and knees me right in the solar plexus. This is supposed to be a boxing round only. I was getting hazed, right, for my first day ever by the coach. And so it was like a liver shot or a sternum shot, clinch knee. And I'm on the ground for 45 seconds.
Been there, yeah.
Can't catch my breath, like can't even I'm panicking, right? Because, you know, like when you get hit in the solar plexus, you can't inhale.
Right.
So your breath is just stuck. And so I'm fucking panicking and freaking out. And then I literally just like by the end of it, I kind of roll over onto my knees and I'm trying to catch my breath. And I was like, I thought it was boxing only. And he goes, sorry. And then proceeded to get up and fuck me up more. My first day, my first round ever with a coach.
But that's the old school way,
dude. Man.
Look, we got to put context out there. Like, MMA wasn't always like for profit or for commercial. I mean, like training. It was just a sick group of psychos.
And this was a fighter gym too.
Yeah, no, especially at a fighter gym. It's just like a weird group of guys. It was a weird group of people that trained MMA when I started. Like we kind of normalized, and eventually like normal people started to walk through the doors. But when I first went, it was like it was a weird group of guys, And that first day, that was kind of like, let's see if this guy really wants to be here.
Yeah.
Like, let's see if we're wasting our time on this guy.
I think that's what it was, but man, I'm just not. That's bullying.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, that's bullying.
I
You
think
can
with
build people up
strikes,
to that.
With strikes, it sucks, Because
Yeah.
I remember like you would walk through the doors back in the day, and they'd hard wrestle you, they'd hard roll you.
Yeah.
And then like the guys who really wanted it, they'd be like, yeah, that was fun. I want to come back tomorrow, And they'd be like, we got a fighter. Right?
Yeah.
That's how they knew back in the day.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I guess maybe it's just follows along the line. I'll give you a fucking even grosser story. Oh God! Again, when we training back in the day, right? So I'm 16, and I just started with my high school wrestling team. I was training at PHS in Parkersburg High School, and when I started wrestling in high school, we were like top 20 in the nation every year that I was wrestling there. So like it was a big, like 20 state championships, like top 20 in the year every time we were that I was in high school there. And I literally remember I walked up as a sophomore, grade 10, first day of wrestling practice. And, I just kind of ended up fucking around. And I'd done like 2 years of wrestling up to I started when I was 13 or 14. So 2 or 3 years of wrestling before that. But I'm in high school now. I'm training with the big boys, right? And I start wrestling with this guy who was a bit of a dick. And then I didn't know what this was at the time. One of the guys goes, check his oil.
Oh, no.
And I was like, I didn't even register in my head what the fuck he meant. And then, he's like on my back trying to break me down. And then all of a sudden I feel this dude's fingers go up my fucking ass. And he starts, he didn't penetrate, but it was enough to be like, whoa, and I like roll over and freak out. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And they all thought this was hilarious. And I'm like, oh my God. As I think back to what it was like to train when I first started compared to now, like even Charmaine I made a joke about checking oil or something the other day. And Charmaine's like, did people really do that? And I'm like, hold on, I got a story for you.
Yeah.
Happened to me directly my first day of high school wrestling.
That's pretty common though back then.
my
Yeah.
God.
So in the States, I mean, the term exists for a reason, right?
You can see pictures. If you
Yeah,
look
yeah,
up online,
yeah.
you will see dudes knuckle deep up other dudes' assholes in singlets
Yeah.
from like in college matches and shit from checking oil. Like,
There's a lot of dirty stuff that happens in wrestling. You don't see it from a distance, or you don't know about it unless you're a wrestler. Yeah,
things like that.
There's a lot of. I mean, people say the wrestling doesn't have strikes, bro.
If you snap down somebody
Oh
hard on
yeah,
the
yeah.
back of the head,
Those dirty elbows in the pummel, like those collar
Headbutts as
ties.
you're rolling through.
Yeah. Everything, chin in the eyes, like all kinds of dirty stuff.
yeah, we that we used to do this drill in wrestling where you'd put your arms behind your back and then you're basically pummeling in for head position.
Yeah.
So like, you have you have head position under my chin, right?
Right.
And then I have to roll my forehead back under your chin, and you're just trying to establish that head under the chin pressure, right, to stop them from being able to get down.
Right.
And it would just turn into like these fucking headbutting matches where you would do that. And then I told a story of I had this high school wrestling coach called Troy Owens. He was this little black dude, like little skinny ass black dude, 55, 60 kg or something, really skinny dude. And he had this fucking Brillo pad of an afro on his head. And he would get you into the collar tie, and he would take his afro and just grind it in your face and on your nose and on your mouth. And then by the time that you were done wrestling, you would have burns just like all over your face. And he would keep it shaved down really low. So it was like a wiry Brillo pad that he was rubbing on your face and shit.
Yeah, wrestling's a rough sport, man.
It's the roughest.
That's why, I guess it can be if it's in every high school and you don't have to pay for it. Like, there's no way you'd be able to sell that to the public, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the way we did it.
No.
Definitely not the way we did it.
I still say to this day, I'm 30. I've fought pro MMA. I've fought jiu-jitsu competitions, Muay Thai, kickboxing. I've still never trained as hard or had hardest practices as I did when I was high school wrestling.
High school wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, that was the highest I ever wrestled. Then I started doing jiu-jitsu. And, but even still to this day, those practices were nightmare fuel. Like, even to this day, even pro fight training camps were not as hard as some of those wrestling practices, where they would deliberately try to make you puke.
Yeah.
Like, it was disgusting. I would shout out to PHS Wrestling, by the way.
Wrestling is pretty brutal, man. I got to say, though, I think that when I first started, I don't know where you were in the world, but you started around the same time, 2005, 2006. There weren't lightweights. There weren't featherweights. There weren't bantamweights. The lowest weight class in the UFC at the time was 77
Especially
kilos.
in America, right?
Yeah, in America, right? 77 kilos. So that's a guy who walks around probably at least 85 to 90 kilos back then, probably 100 kilos now, right? And so at the gym, everybody was 100 kilos plus. So you're sparring with these guys, that probably sucked worse than wrestling, to be honest.
Like, you're just getting squished.
Oh man, it's not like some of them weren't even trying to be dicks. So, you know, like they go for a Kimura or something, and they're just used to pulling on a 100-kilo guy's arm. And when they pull on a guy's arm who's 70 kilos, it just goes, man. It just rips, and then.
To be fair, it's like every female who trains probably jiu-jitsu. I mean, imagine Charmaine, she's 50 kg. And this gym, for whatever reason, it's all big boys here. Like the average weight here is probably 80 kilos or something like that. And I just sometimes try to think like what it's like to be some of the women that train jiu-jitsu just getting fucking squished all the time.
Yeah, but they give it back though. They give it back like twice as much.
Well, they're tougher than the men generally.
Oh,
is that true in your experience?
Like when I'm injured, I used to be like, I think I'll just roll with the girls today. Now I'm like, I'll roll with the big guys. They're more aware of their strength.
We were just having this conversation before the podcast.
Yeah, because the little girls they'll cross-face me like extra hard and tweak my neck, and I'll be like all sore. And yeah.
I was talking to one of my friends, Greg. He did the first podcast with me. His wife is 9 months exactly pregnant. She's meant to have her baby on Wednesday. Oh. And I was telling her, you know, we're talking about pregnancy, and I was trying to say that, you know, I can't relate to what the anxiety and the nerves would be like when you're about to have a baby in 2 days. Yeah. Like, you know, imagine. Like, I can't even imagine the stress and the fear and all that, and plus the lifestyle changes and all of that on top of it. But then I told her, like, in my experience, universally, women are just tougher than the men. I mean, I've been doing this for years, and their capacity to endure pain and discomfort and everything, I've just universally seen that the men will complain before the women almost always. And it just seems to be a trend that I've always seen, is that their ability to endure being uncomfortable and being bent and twisted and just in physical pain seems to be they have a higher threshold, probably because they give birth, right? But
could be.
In my experience, that's the case, is that the women are...
Or they've got more to prove.
Also could be. Yeah. Also could be.
Yeah.
But, you know, they just don't have those physical attributes, so I feel like they need to rely more on toughness. And
yeah, that's true.
They're not as strong, they're not as fast, they just don't have that stuff.
There are some exceptions, like Tiffany's a gorilla of a woman.
Dude, her shoulders are wider than yours.
Yeah, for sure.
She is strong as shit.
Yeah.
You can see it when she grapples and stuff. We were talking about her on the last podcast with Matt.
Yeah. Oh, she can throw an average man around, like physically. Like,
love it.
Like without technique.
Yeah.
Like just.
I still want to get her on the podcast, man.
Yeah. She's awesome.
That's cool, man. I'm really glad we did this podcast. I've been wanting to do it for fucking ages. We get to sit here and just talk shit about fights, talk shit about training. I want to go back to the Lethwei thing a little bit. Is this a new organization, this World Lethwei? How long have you been doing it, and what's their reach? Are they based mostly in Asia, or?
Yeah. So it's been like, I've been with them for about a year. I'm the first foreign referee for them. So when I came on board, that was like part of their movement to kind of globalize. So now we've got shows scheduled next year for. We've only been in Myanmar for the last year, but next year we've got big plans. So we're going to Japan, going to the U.S.
And it's legal it's legal in the U.S., or you have to go to Indian reservation or some shit?
Well, it depends on which commission. Like from the conversations that have been had so far, it's kind of like, from what I understand, it's like some commissions are more relaxed than others. Like, it'll never be legal probably in California or Nevada. Oh, yeah. Right? Just because there's not anything like it.
Pussy liberals, that's why.
Well, there's not anything like it, you know? So you got to find they would be like, this is very violent boxing, or this is a very unique form of MMA or something. I don't know. So it wouldn't fit into their...
What are the rules? Like, you're a referee and a judge. So like, what's the, if you don't mind, because I actually don't know, what's the scoring system? What do they score more dominantly? And then what's the general rule set?
Okay, so traditional Lethwei didn't have scoring. It was like either you knocked them out or draw.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's kind of anticlimactic for a global audience, right?
Yeah, totally.
So they added a scoring system. So it's a 20-point must system. So which is a little bit better, to be honest, because you've seen a lot of these fights where, like, you land more jabs than I do in the first and second round, and then I beat the shit out of you the third round, and you still win the fight because you won 2 rounds 10-9, and I lost. Then I had 1 round 10-9, right? But so this one we have 20-point must system, so you can make the spread a little bit further. So, like, let's say you land more jabs, you just
How many rounds are there?
5.
5 rounds.
Well, there could be 4, or there could be 3.
2 minutes or 3?
3 minutes each round. Yeah, and 2 minutes in between.
You get a 2-minute break.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting idea too, because then you're more fresh.
Yeah. So it gets pretty fired up. But yeah, so some of the undercard fights might be 4 rounds or something like that. I think the ladies' fights are 3 rounds, typically. But yeah, they have ladies now as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
always down for. I mean, it's kind of brutal to watch the ladies fucking headbutting each other, but I'm
Yeah.
not. But I'm equality for violence. So
Yeah, equality
ladies,
for
men,
violence.
I'm down. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty good that so far we've had ladies from all over. We've been able to find like some good European fighters and.
So people are training this specifically now, right?
Some,
Like people are,
what
or
you're
is it
getting-
like the bare knuckle crew starting to transition more?
I
The
think right
MMA
now
guys?
we're getting crossover. So like one of the biggest fights we've had in the last couple events was Dave Leduc, who's like the king of Lethwei, right? The guy is like, that's like you got back in our day, Anderson Silva was the king of MMA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or nowadays, I don't know who, maybe John Jones or somebody like that, right? They've got Dave Leduc. So this is the first white guy to kind of come over and
Where's he from?
learn Lethwei. He's from Canada.
Ah, I've heard the name. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
you've
Canadian guy.
Yeah, Canadian guy.
I've heard the name.
Tall, lanky guy, but explosive for some reason, right? Yeah, he just had a big fight with Seth Baczynski,
He's an MMA fighter, right?
MMA guy. Yeah, MMA guy. So that's the thing. At these higher weight classes, hard to find Burmese guys that they're that big, right?
Yeah, you can't really.
Yeah,
Right?
you can't. So if they brought over as sort of a test run, they just brought over this super athlete,
Yeah.
this huge like UFC level guy. I mean, he's fought in the UFC. He's a UFC veteran, and they matched him up with Dave. So that was a pretty cool fight. I mean, of course, Dave is he's trained actual Lethwei, so he was just like dangerous everywhere, like
Okay,
up
so-
close, mid range, like long range, everywhere.
So okay, here's the thing. The thing that makes Lethwei really interesting is the
Mm-hmm.
headbutt rules, and also the the extended time both between the rounds and like between knockdowns. But how much do headbutts play a factor? Like when you watch a fight, I have no doubt that they play a factor and that they're significant. But in your opinion, how much do they play? And then maybe a subsequent point is, what do you think the damage payoff is to the person that's doing the headbutt, as opposed to the person receiving it?
Oh, okay. So I think the biggest thing about headbutts is honestly it kind of like nullifies the tie clinch, the plum, because the head can shoot right through the hands.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
you think it's more? There must be. Yeah, I didn't think about the defensive tactics of headbutting.
Yeah.
Like doing it to avoid a position or something.
Yeah. Not only that.
I'm just thinking like I fucking grab you and ram your head, but I guess that's probably not really the way that it goes most of the time.
Yeah, I think it does kind of that happens. I see guys running, they throw the headbutt, but I don't see a lot of fights end with headbutt. To be honest, I see the headbutt as kind of like a deterrent
Yeah.
for a lot of other positions and ranges. You
For
see the way the clinch game works now, it's completely different. Guys
You
almost
can't
do
have
like
space
that.
between your heads at all. You must be head to head, or else any distance you would just.
Yeah, or what you see a lot of is like it looks like when you watch it, it looks like all these guys are unskilled, but they know exactly what they're doing, man. Like that schoolyard bully headlock, that you can't be headbutt from there, right? So why have this guy in a tie clinch when he can shoot his head through and hit you in the mouth?
Oh, so for them, they do the
A lot of times, yeah.
the old school headlock where
when they end up clinched and they're like, all right, I don't want to be headbutt, but I wouldn't mind a little bit of a break. Let me just hold this guy here for a second.
Is there now if that happens, is there a break? Does the referee break them?
Yeah,
or?
there's no action, they'll break it. But here's the thing. This is going back to that first fight that I was talking about. This happened in the last show, and the guy was in the we call it the bully headlock, right? He connected his hands together, hipped in, boom, KO.
Suplexed the
Yep.
shit out of him, right?
Knocked him out.
Shit, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the rules with breaking the clinch or break? When do they separate you?
When it's inactive, yeah.
Okay.
So when there's nothing going on, it's like, okay, this is boring. Let's get back to fighting again.
Even though you can suplex from those clinches,
Yeah,
because
but-
I would just think that would be the go-to move right
Yeah,
away.
but sometimes it is. You have some guys. I've
Is
seen
it like
some
3
guys,
seconds, like kind of like kickboxing or whatever? When the offense stops, then the referee just comes in and.
right? But you got to look at the position itself too. So if you can say like, okay, there's still offense like happening from here, or there's potential to make offense happen from here, then you let it go a little bit. And I think every ref's probably a little bit different, like how long they'll let the clinch go. But
I gotta say, dude, that's really interesting. Like,
Yeah.
I was kind of against it until I talked to you, but
Yeah.
now that I've talked to you, I kind of thought it's just the brutality of it is kind of hard for me to deal with because I just see some of those brutal knockouts. But then you talked about this guy coming back and winning after being knocked out cold.
yeah,
The brutality of it's kind of hard for me to get over, but the self-defense aspect of it and the sport-specific stuff of being in these bad positions and being able to headbutt, the martial artist in me is like, oh, I didn't think about some of that stuff that you're talking about, like the
Right.
distance between your heads, putting people in the bully headlock because you can't headbutt from there, and then, of course, the suplexes from there. There's a whole new dimension. And, compared to something like bare-knuckle boxing, like Lethwei is just a way cooler version because you can.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, but you can kick and you can knee and you can elbow and you can headbutt. So that's, I mean,
It's
people do
basically
that. So
anything that can happen on the feet. It can happen in Lethwei. So
when are they going to
it's
do
most
the
honest expression of stand-up fighting?
When are they going to do the Vale Tudo version, which is just full-on MMA?
Like add non-violent techniques.
Headbutt from the guard, headbutt from the
yeah.
closed guard. Like, just extrapolate further. Like, this is going to be MMA, full contact, whatever the fuck goes, except for basically eye gouging. And
I think that, I mean,
that's got to be coming. That's a natural extension.
I don't
of
think
Lethwei,
it would be.
right?
I don't think it would be from Lethwei because Lethwei has its traditional roots and everything, and it can kind of build off of that. I think it would have to be somebody else to do that, but I think it would have to come at a time when we've gotten used to seeing headbutts. I remember when I was a kid and when we first saw leg kicks, we're like, that's cheating. You know what I mean? Because we came from American kickboxing.
Yeah.
When you kicked above the waist and you punched with the hands, that was the way you fought. Right?
Yeah, it was dirty if you
elbowed or if you threw it.
Even the leg locks as recently as 5 or 10 years ago, right?
Dude, I've been
that was a
yelled
dirty
at.
move.
I've been yelled at for the better half of 2 decades.
Yeah, for leg locks.
For
and
leg
shit.
locking people, and every time I go somewhere, we don't do that here. I'm like, oh, sorry, I didn't know.
I was just trying to tap you out.
I was just trying to.
What are these rules? These IBJJF rules.
Yeah.
That's interesting, man. Well, and here's the other thing. Like, the perfect analogy is leg locks. People were worried that they would be just devastating in terms of their impact, tear the ligaments, and then you can't train for a year and all that kind of shit. But naturally, as time progresses, did you watch the last ADCC?
Yeah.
So, if the ADCC 2 years ago was all leg locks, this is when the Danaher and the EBIs before that, and even the one before that, like every match ended in a heel hook. It was this new element that the Danaher Death Squad guys had mastered, and they were so far above the curve that every fucking match ended in a heel hook, and they just thought this is the death of traditional jiu-jitsu. But then, if you watch the most recent one, the only one who leg locked anybody was like Lachlan Giles.
Yeah.
Other than that, like Gordon Ryan got like fucking 5 rear naked chokes. Yeah. And it became more wrestling and old school jiu-jitsu because the defense had bridged the gap.
Right.
And then I think it could be a similar story. Once the headbutting game becomes a thing, the metagame will start to develop and the defenses will start to develop. And then, those things won't be as devastating and they won't be so dramatic. They will still have their place, but the natural defenses will start to happen, and then,
That's what I said about soccer kicks. It's like every time there's something that people don't understand.
This is coming from the guy who's got a brutal soccer kick knockout.
Yeah.
If you want to go watch it, go watch Major's fight with Bruno Pucci, and he literally got his head punted into the fucking stands.
Yeah. But I've always thought that, like, it's whenever somebody doesn't know how to defend something, people are like, oh, it's easy, anybody can do that. I'm like, yeah, but not really, because everything.
You can't be in that positions, right?
Well, everything's going to evolve, Like,
Yeah.
there would be a point where people actually know how to defend soccer kicks. Old school jiu-jitsu guys knew how to defend headbutts on the ground. I don't know that the new school guys do, because we haven't really seen like that be a problem in new school jiu-jitsu. Like, your lapel is more of a problem than a headbutt, right? So that old school like self-defense aspect of jiu-jitsu where we were defending headbutts, like that's more or less gone. It's with the old school guys. If you don't have gray in your beard, you probably don't know that. Yeah.
Okay, so let me segue this into what my concern is with the Lethwei, and that would be the damage, specifically the head-on-head collision. I just want to get your take on, we're both not doctors. We should fucking say this straight out.
Right.
But I would be curious what you think, because if I headbutt you, that's still my brain taking plenty of that impact, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to like what you think the trade-offs would be. Now, I would say that a head kick will certainly do more damage than a headbutt, because I think headbutts will generally happen from a clinching range. So the distance traveled and the kinetic energy that can be applied to the strike is less, because you're going to be close to it. I'm not going to like diving headbutt you from a distance any further than like where we can grab each other. Right. So I think the impact just by the nature of the strike is less than a distance strike, like a head kick or a hook or a punch or something like that.
Right.
But I would be curious as to what's the trade-off for the person that's delivering the headbutt and the person receiving it, because my concern is that brain trauma specifically.
Well, like I said, I really don't believe that fights are what causes the damage. I believe it's the training that causes the damage. So if they have a good training methodology, how many headbutts are you going to take in your life? 2? You'll be all right.
How many do you see in a fight, if you had to guess? How prolific of a technique is it in Lethwei that you've seen?
Okay, a headbutt that actually lands flush and rattles somebody, I would say I'd be shocked to see more than 1 in a fight, to be honest.
So it's not
on average.
It's not the most efficient strike most of the time to throw.
No, it would be efficient on us probably. Like we don't train it, but
for the train.
For the guys who train it, they're like, hey, let's.
Okay,
there's certain thing they can't do because the headbutt's going to be there. It's the same thing. Like if you go your whole life without training heel hooks, you can just put your feet in the air and just let them float, and you think you're safe all the time. And then as soon as like Danaher Death Squad's like, hey, wait a minute, what if we twisted that? Then all of a sudden the whole meta changes, right? But once it changes, again, now we're avoiding the leg locks again. It's just we've had to change our meta in order to do that, and that's the way the fight looks now too. The way they clinch is different. The way they move their feet, everything is different. Their level changes, all of that.
Okay, so let me then. We got to take a break soon, but let me go another way with this. How do you safely train headbutting? What do you put a fucking forehead pillow on so you can like? How do you train that? Because in sparring you wear shin pads and you wear gloves and you can kind of make contact. How do you safely headbutt each other in practice?
Well, it's the same question. How do you safely throw elbows in practice?
Elbow pads.
Is it safe? I've
compared to cutting is the real damage with the elbows.
I've seen guys
right?
with headgear, full headgear,
like the rugby headgear, and you just fucking
and with
the
elbow pads, and I've seen it slice right through.
Oh, I have no doubt that it could.
Elbows are brutal, bro.
But have you seen the actual training? Like, what do they do?
No, not really. They mostly will just hit the pads and stuff like that.
Just fucking like 1, 2, pop. Like how do they? Do you just like throw the pad at the forehead?
Yeah, I wonder how many.
God, it's so fascinating. I don't know.
Like I think even like doing 100 reps of headbutt.
Yeah, your neck by the end of it, dude. You're not gonna be able to turn your head.
Not super good. Yeah.
And then, God, it's so interesting. I mean, listen, I'm fascinated by this. I have no issue with. Look, if you're an adult and you want to do something, I think you should be able to do it. If it's fight people, or if it's do this, if it's do that, if you sign the waiver, you write your own ticket and whatever you choose to do. Same thing with jiu-jitsu and heel hooks, and there's risk to any activity that you do. So I believe that if you want to do it, you should be able to do it. But I would like to see. I just imagine like 1, 2, pop, like 1, 2, look, pop.
Well, to be honest, a lot of the training now is still pretty like.
They're still developing the training modalities.
It's archaic. Right? Well, yeah. So now what they've got going on is we're starting the Lethwei Academy, World Lethwei Academy. So what that's going to be is it's going to be like taking a bunch of young guys, teaching them about proper nutrition, proper strength and conditioning, teaching them English, teaching them how to do media work. So giving them like a real education, but also teaching them like how to train properly as well, how to train more efficiently. So I think that's going to give rise to like a new generation of Lethwei. Like you're seeing now guys who are tough. They've got the heart. They've got the will. But the methodologies is probably the same as it was 100 years. Yeah, 100 years ago.
Headbutting each other and training, and
you hop off your elephant and you go do a little bit of Lethwei training.
Hop off your elephant.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh my God, that's hilarious, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, well, we're going to take a break here. We're going to smash another beer. This is Stronghold Podcast, Episode 8. We'll be back soon. Cheers. Okay, everyone, we're back to the Stronghold Podcast. I'm here with former one championship fighter, jiu-jitsu black belt, and just good fucking dude, major overall. What's up, dude? We're back.
We're back.
Having some more beer, ready to go, ready to talk about the UFC.
Empty bladder, open mind. Let's go.
I like that. That's what I had to do. It's just, we always cut every podcast in half because I got to take a leak because I get you fucking degenerates on here and I'm just drinking all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it goes. So let's talk about the UFC, man. You saw, right? You saw that we had Demian Maia in the gym.
That's so awesome.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
Man, I got a really cool story about him. So if you guys don't know, Demian Maia came in to train at Stronghold. One of my business partners, he's just a weird dude. Really cool guy, but he speaks Portuguese, and he just is in this sort of Brazilian community and everything. He's from Angola, and they speak Portuguese there. So he's got this kind of language connection with a lot of these guys. So he's friends with all the Brazilians in some way or another. Demian Maia's team or someone through him got in touch with my business partner, and they were looking for a place to train. Usually, when people look for a place to train in Singapore, they always go to Evolve.
Right.
But problem is, his opponent is repping Evolve.
Right.
So I guess they needed somewhere else to go. And so a couple days ago, he sends a message on our group chat, and he's just like, hey, Demian Maia needs a place to train. It's at this time. Is that cool? And I'm like, fuck yeah, man. Are you kidding me? Demian Maia is going to be in my gym. So, he went totally Brazilian on it, right? Because, he was supposed to be here at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so I get up at like 7:15. I mop the mats. I make sure everything looks great. So I know our gym doesn't look like a shithole or something when he comes in. And then, he shows up an hour plus late. So I'm just like, me and Charmaine went to bed at like 2. And then I'm up at 7 and I'm just tired. And then I'm waiting for like an hour and a half for this dude to turn up. And then, he does the Brazilian thing and he rolls in with like 10 people and they start training. But he was just cool, man. Like, first of all, he's huge.
He's a welterweight.
Was a middleweight.
Yeah,
now
he was
he's
a
a
middleweight,
welterweight.
yeah.
Dude, okay, for the listeners, welterweight is what I weigh now. I'm about 168, 170-ish. Right,
77 kilos for the...
Yeah, 77 kg. I'm
Yeah.
like 75. 75 and a half. I just checked myself yesterday.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
you
basically...
gained a little bit of weight too then.
Dude, I'm
Coach life.
jacked, dude. What are you talking about?
Coach life.
So he came in, and I realized that next week he's going to weigh the same thing as me, which is fucking insane. He is gigantic. He's at least 8 inches taller than me, 6 or 8 inches taller than me. He's 6'5", 6, something like that. And he's jacked, huge. And so they came in and trained. And I got this really interesting story if anyone wants to know how cool Demian Maia is. So I assume every listener in this show knows who he is. But he's fighting Ben Askren in the main event of UFC Singapore. And he's a ADCC champion, and he's a Mundial champion in the gi. And he's fought Anderson Silva for the title, and he just fought Tyron Woodley last year. He's like ranked in the top 5, and he's been there for 10 years. And he came in and trained and shit, and we kind of just left our distance, and I had this friend, Jake, shout out to you, Jake. His little daughter comes in and she trains at 10 o'clock, and I told them the training window was 8 to 10 because that's when our kids' classes start. And so I sent him a message like 30 minutes earlier. I'm like, hey, bro, if you come in a little early, you might get a surprise. Part of their thing was, you can't videotape it. They don't want anybody to swamp the gym, so, you can't really tell anybody that he's here. And but I told him, because it's usually just 2 people that come in for that class, and his daughter was one. So I was like, hey, if you come in a little bit early, you might get a treat, And his daughter, India, is going to compete at the Singapore BJJ Open in November. She's 5 years old, cute as shit, right? Just little blonde hair girl, just like kind of a space cadet. She's just always rolling around and smiling and stuff. And, at the end of training, they're sitting there watching because they came in early to see him. And then I asked if he minds taking a picture with us in front of the sign because we can share it on the social media. He's like, he was really cool. And then after that, Jake and India come up and they try to take a picture with him too. And I we're sitting over there, sitting on the chairs and stuff. And he goes over and just starts talking to her out of the blue. Like, he's chilling with all of his bros. And then he goes over and he's like, hey, how are you doing? He starts talking to this little 5-year-old. And then I was like, oh, she's going to compete in her first competition in like 3 weeks. And he's like, oh, you're going to compete. How old are you? And he just like randomly goes out of his way to talk to the little girl that's got like 2 stripes on her white belt. And he's just like talking to the family. He goes out of his way. They didn't come up to him. He goes out of his way to make sure he talked to everybody. And he's like, oh, I've got a son that's your age. And they just started training jiu-jitsu. And he just went out of his way to bond with like a small kid that came into the gym. Yeah. No one went up to him. He went over to her and started talking to her about training and all that kind of stuff and about competing. I just thought it was fucking cool, man. He's a guy that you can just tell is exactly like he's perceived.
Yeah, so he's like the hero of the jiu-jitsu community. It's like, forget all the credentials, like ADC. Nobody cares about that. Because most of the time, a lot of times it doesn't translate into real fighting, right? So he's the guy who makes jiu-jitsu work in 2019, right? So he's the hero of all nerds.
Yeah.
Right? So,
and he's 40.
But he's been making it work for a long time, to be
Yeah.
fair. So he's maybe like at the end of his run, but he's still looking pretty good.
He fought Woodley last year.
Yeah, he fought Woodley last year.
For the title.
Yeah. So, I think everybody who does jiu-jitsu has a place in their heart for Demian Maia. However, I personally feel Askren takes the fight.
Yeah.
I just think that I've never seen Demian Maia submit anybody off of his back. I can't see him not being on his back against Askren. So, unless it turns into a shitty kickboxing match, which I'm not really like keen to watch at all. I'll throw my beer. I'll start throwing beer into the cage if that happens.
I can give you a little insider information because this podcast will be released after the fight happens. So without, pissing off Demian Maia or anything, but I can tell you he got taken down in training and by some guys that are obviously not Ben Askren.
Right.
Having said that, the caveat is they were Shark Tanking him.
Okay.
So he was in the whole time and they kept bringing in fresh people like every 30 or 45 seconds. It's just training. It doesn't mean shit, right? But he was taken down by some people. And Jake, the guy that brought in his girl, made a hilarious joke. He goes, what's weird? I didn't see him drill one flying knee. And I was like, that's fucking hilarious, man. Because Ben Askren just got flatlined by a flying knee in 5 seconds in his last fight. They were like, yeah, he didn't drill a single flying knee.
That happens. Dude, if he threw if Demian Maia comes out and throws a flying knee, it'd be so disrespectful.
I don't know, man.
I'd
be into
Maia,
it.
bro.
I'd be into it, man.
I guess it'd be kind
maybe
of like,
flying triangle then? Because he'll probably still drop his head. I don't know. You can train it in
maybe
something.
something like that will be. I don't know. How do you think that fight goes, though?
I think I tend to agree with you. I think Askren will wrestle fuck him.
I think everybody's emotional. They're fans of jiu-jitsu. I'm a fan of jiu-jitsu, obviously. Like, I've been doing jiu-jitsu.
We're also fans of wrestling. Like, we are both wrestlers.
We're both wrestlers. I guess I was a wrestler first.
I was too.
Yeah. But to be fair, I learned jiu-jitsu because I was not as good of a wrestler as the other guys.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck this. I hate this. I suck at it. And then I was like, oh, this is way more chill.
Yeah,
I can just do this.
They were taking me down and punching me in the face. And I was like, I got to learn how to triangle or something. This is not going to work for
I
me.
was like, this is too hard.
Yeah.
I can't handle wrestling at all.
Yeah. Like, I'm on my back every round. I can probably use that to my advantage.
Let me just stay there.
Yeah.
And then
I'll master that. And then I'll be the guy who's on the back every round and they're fighting for position.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like both. I've met both guys because when I was it? Okay, I was actually talking to Steven about this on the podcast. Was it when I was cornering you when you fought Boku that Ben Askren fought Sapo the second time, or was it with him?
He was supposed to. Yeah, he was supposed to. But then Sapo missed weight.
Yeah, so that was with you.
Yeah, it was with me.
That was when Ben Askren started shit-talking him as he was walking on the scale.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, that was with you. Okay, I could not remember. It was so funny.
Yeah.
I've told the story, but I couldn't remember if I was with you or Steven.
That was with me, yeah.
Yeah, because he's fucking dying to try to make weight. And then Ben Askren's, we're in the media room, like in the back. It's only the fighters, the coaches, and then like, a photographer or some shit. And they're trying to do the official weigh-in. And Sapo missed the first weight. And then, so he goes, he cuts weight. Ben had already made weight. And then he comes back in just looking dead. I mean, his head is dragging. He's clearly cut way too much weight. Knew he wasn't going to make weight. And on the way to the scale, Ben Askren is just mercilessly shit-talking him about missing weight. And he's making everybody laugh at him. And I just kind of thought, like, this is crazy. He's like, everybody's laughing at this guy while he's fucking miserable, supposed to be fighting in the main event. And Ben Askren's making jokes about him being fat. While he's trying to weigh in, and everyone in the back is laughing at him, and I'm just like, this is fucking surreal, because Ben Askren is that guy. He will shit talk. He's just that game. He doesn't give a fuck. He will just shit talk no matter what.
I mean, he knows the game. Like, he knows how to sell in America, and that's how you sell in America.
Yeah.
Right? And the problem is, like, people don't have that ability here, so they switch the model.
Yeah. Well, that's that and the evolved Chatri warrior spirit,
Well, I mean, I think a lot of that was happening organically because people are...
Asia is not America.
No, it is. But then, like, 20% of it's probably, like, a little bit, like, forced. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, Colby Covington is way more than 20%.
Yeah.
That's just 100% forced.
Yeah. It gets cringe,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's hilarious because even Henry Cejudo, he's just calling himself the king of cringe. He's just leaning into it.
Yeah.
He knows it's forced, and rather than pretending like Colby that that's who he is, he's just leaning into the fact that he's cringing.
Yeah.
And that's somehow made him more relatable. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like after the McGregor era, like, people thought, oh, that's the magical formula to making money. Just kind of act like a douche,
But then you see people like Adesanya, who is actually like that. Like, he's got that charisma that's sort of natural, like Conor.
Yeah.
Like, Conor doesn't feel forced. At least it didn't. Nowadays, it maybe does a bit more. But, like, when he was coming up, that shit was just flowing from him organically. And Adesanya kind of has that vibe. Like,
I felt like Conor had, like, a B-level joke writer writing him some one-liners to
But
for
an MMA fighter, that's an A-level writer. Like,
I guess so. I always thought Chael was more clever.
Oh, me too. Chael's the best. I think
Yeah.
he's the best. I still think he's the best of all time.
Yeah.
People think that Conor's better, but I think Chael is my number one trash talker of all time.
Like, I know Brazilians that love Chael.
It's just because he's a shit talker.
He's just so funny, man.
Yeah.
Like it's too over the top to be taken serious. Like,
Yeah.
the Nogueira and the carrots on the bus. Oh, come on, dude. That's hilarious.
The line of, like, I don't lay on my back and let people on top of me in between my legs because I'm a Republican. That's fucking hilarious, dude.
Yeah.
That's one of the best trash talking lines of all time. I laughed for a week after I fucking heard that shit. Like,
Yeah.
So good. I will say one thing about Demian Maia before we kind of segue. The one story that I didn't talk to him much, to be honest, because he was training. I just didn't want to be that guy
Right,
to
for sure.
interrupt and just take too much of his time. But before we took a picture, I told him I couldn't remember who he fought, but you and I are both pro MMA fighters. We've both had plenty of fights. We've competed in multiple disciplines of martial arts. I never relish hurting anyone. I actually get kind of a cringe reaction. I think the reason why I don't take to fighting, even though I love it so much that I want to do it all the time in the gym, the reason I don't like the act itself is because I don't like hurting people. Like, just straight up. I don't get pleasure from that. Even my time when I fought, it was more like interest in technique. Like, I wanted to see my skills in a full-on scenario. It was never about defeating people. I'm not that competitive to where I'm driven to win to the point where I want to crush people. Like, I don't have that in me. It's just pure intellectual interest and interest in seeing my skill set in its natural environment. It was never. I'm not the type to step on people or crush people or just fucking kill you.
We're both also gamers, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's also like the ultimate strategy game.
It's like that.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the ultimate strategy game.
It was just curiosity.
Sometimes I forget that other people see fighting as violence. So like, oh yeah, you could kick his ass. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot that you see
that's the
fighting
point.
you see fighting as violence. I just see it as a game. Like this is a game where
I'm totally
trying
detached.
I'm trying to master this game. I'm trying to master this skill set, you know?
I'm as detached as much as I can be, but in every fight that I've been in, you know, you hurt each other. That's the name of the game.
Right.
And I always felt weird about it because I don't even like hurt. If I hurt a training partner, like I've accidentally hurt people. It happens, right? Especially when you first start. I seriously get sick in my stomach. Like that's why I harp so much on control. Like with my students and everything. And so I told Demian Maia that he had that quote after the fight. I don't know which fight it was a couple years ago.
That fight, yeah.
He talked about how in his post-fight, how his goal is just to win his fights. And if he has to hurt you, he'll do it because that's what he's there to do. He's not going to let someone hurt him. But his ultimate goal is to win with the least amount of force and without hurting his opponent, which is why he does jiu-jitsu. Because his goal is to win his fights with the least amount of harm coming to his opponent. And I told him that, and I was like, for me, that's why you stand out as a fighter to me, because I relate to that sentiment so much. Like, I feel that competitive drive, and I want to win, and I love martial arts, so that's just kind of the name of the game. But I just fucking hate causing people harm. I don't like to be hurt,
well,
you know? So
here's the thing. If you don't like to be hurt, then I can say, at least from personal experience, I've grossly underestimated least amount of harm required to win that fight, and a lot of times it was not enough because maybe I held back or maybe I.
Well, that's the thing, right? That is totally a thing, and that can happen.
Yeah.
But he mastered the art. He's the best ever at winning without hurting his opponents.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's his whole game is just built around that, and that's the essence of jiu-jitsu. And that's what I told him when I met him. I was like, he's like you said earlier, he is jiu-jitsu in MMA in a full contact situation personified.
Yeah.
And he represents all of those things that people pretend like it's the gentle art, it's this, it's that. Well, it is with some people and isn't with others.
Right.
But he really just the essence of jiu-jitsu, I think, you know.
Yeah.
And it was fucking cool having him in my gym, like training here. You know what? Actually, I was saying his striking is pretty fucking good. He had one of the best pad holders I've ever seen. It's like, he almost looked like an Indian Malay dude.
Oh, yeah?
He was Brazilian, but he, this dude, the beard. I wish I'd gotten a picture with the whole team. I kind of regret. He left his fucking, I was telling you, he left his gloves. He left like a water bottle. He left his mouth guard, and he left his fucking room key to the Mandarin sitting over there on my thing. So he went classic Brazilian and just left most of his shit here. So I got some souvenirs from him being here. But, excuse me, I was amazed at his pad holder, dude. I mean, this guy was good. He didn't do any kicks or anything. It was all just straight boxing. But he looked pretty sharp on the feet, man. He was doing like a minute grappling, and then he would have his pad holder come in, and his pad holder was throwing him stuff and, making him duck under for takedowns, but really, really good. And then he would have a fresh guy come in and start grappling with him with situational stuff.
I really hope he doesn't strike. I'm going to be like the antithesis of the Just Bleed fan.
Who do you think's better striker?
Oh, I think Askren's probably the third best striker in the ring. Behind the ref?
Behind the referee? I was like, wait, I didn't get what you were saying at first. That's hilarious.
Yeah, no, man. And that's no secret. And I don't think that Askren would even try to front like it's any different, you know?
So, but Demian might want to strike because he's probably the better striker, right? I mean, he's still with Anderson Silva for 5 rounds.
If he can stay, not a lot of guys with better takedown defense have been unable to stay on their feet against Askren. So,
yeah,
you know?
Well, like I said, he did get taken down in training. I almost hate even saying that because training is not a fight. And, it's kind of a dirty tactic to talk about what you see in training.
Sometimes
But I'm just observing what I see, and this is going to come out of it. And it's no shit talk. Like, of course everyone gets taken down in training. So I don't feel like and again, he was Shark Tanked. He was in the whole time. He did 5 rounds. He fights in a week. He did 5 rounds of hard MMA sparring with fresh people every time, and he was.
To be honest, at 40 years old, I don't think he's going to, in one camp, be able to learn anything in that camp to stop Askren's takedowns. But he can learn how to deal with it. So I think it would make more sense to be taken down. Like, just let the guy take you down. Well,
but he also choked. everybody.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
Everybody.
Yeah. So deal with that. Like, you're in that bad situation because you're definitely going to be there in the fight at some point in time, unless you do run out and throw a flying knee. But
Which you didn't drill a single one, bro.
Yeah.
Dude, the writing's on the wall. The technique is there. Like, the script is written on how to beat this guy.
no, I don't think
Flying knee in 5 seconds, bro.
Yeah. I don't think it's a fluke, but I don't think that's something you can do every time either.
But when someone charges to crash the distance, his instinct is always to drop to the double leg.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for that.
Yeah, that's true.
Is it in the way? God damn it. Sorry, everybody. Mike's stand is in the way. Okay, so with the UFC being done in Singapore this weekend, are you going to go, by the way? Do you want to go?
I'll probably check it out, yeah.
Yeah, let's go, dude. Let's
Yeah.
get wasted and just go and talk some shit at the fights.
Like, we can, we got to balance it out. All the other guys would be yelling, stand him up, stand him up. If Askren and Maia stay standing, sit him down, start in the guard.
No, because we're both coaches, and the typical thing when you go to these is people start talking shit like, kick him in the balls. Most people would think when we would go, we're going to be screaming technical shit. We should just go there and be belligerent as fuck. Poke him in the eyes. Fucking just like finger gouge him. Check his oil.
That's what I do. I think I have like an alternate personality. Like, I start chanting dumb things. I really get like the crowd fired up. I think there's a couple of I think I saw Tainana's fight. And I was like, America, come on, USA. And then the whole crowd started chanting USA.
And you're the only one. Oh, no, you got other people involved?
Because it was like funny. Because like I was with a bunch of Singaporeans and like, yeah, that's funny. Like, yeah, we'll do that. Like,
Yeah, I didn't see you as that type. I feel like you're the type to be shouting instructions and shit, but no, you're just America.
Yeah, no, because it's funny. Like, you're just having a good time, right?
Get the Donald Trump chants going on.
Yeah, it depends. Are you watching a fight for entertainment? Are you watching a fight for education? Are you watching a fight for what? Like, if it's for entertainment, have fun, man.
I mean, at this point for us, it used to be like, this is so fascinating. Now I'm just like going to have a
don't
good
get
time.
me wrong. The Maia Askren fight's one to take notes on for sure.
Yeah.
Like, especially if you love like MMA grappling. I love MMA grappling, man. Like, it's different than jiu-jitsu. It's different than gi no gi. It's just a different meta altogether. But it's something that, like, if you can get a good fight like this is like a beautiful case study of a fight.
I got to tell one story while we're talking about going to fights. 'Cause I just want to get one personal story on record before we go into other things. I just want to talk. It's fucking hilarious, dude. I think it was when you fought Boku. So back this story up. You were supposed to fight in China originally when you fought Boku.
The original card was supposed to be in Shanghai, yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to go corner you for that. But then they had some public holiday. They created some holiday, and the whole event got canceled. So they moved it to Singapore, which is cool because we were both here anyway.
Yeah.
And, you fought Boku, and it was a great fight. I was cornering you for the fight, and it was fucking awesome to watch. And just to be there, the energy was really cool. And then, we all go out afterwards. And it was just fucking hilarious because you didn't bring any clothes. You didn't have anything prepared. Yeah. Your fucking eyes are black. You're busted up. You're wearing like a T-shirt and your fucking your fight shorts.
Yeah.
I can see your cup.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can clearly see your little tiny skinny ass shorts. Your fucking eyes are both black. And your sweat and blood like all over you. And we all go out to the bar afterwards. And you come out wearing your fucking fight gear.
Yeah.
And it was just hilarious because we all took one of those party vans.
Yeah.
Remember that shit?
Yeah, I remember that.
So it was just all a crew of the old trifecta guys. Like Steve was there and Ron and me and you. And we all get that ridiculous party van where the lights are flashing and the music is loud. And we go into a bar and we're just like celebrating after your fight. And you're just like fucked up, 2 clearly black eyes. Your head's swollen. You're in little skinny shorts. You're still wearing your cup. Blood and sweat on you. And I'm just like, this is fucking insane. Like, people have to think you're a serial killer for going to the bar like this.
Yeah, probably, right? The funny thing, I didn't think ahead. I was just like, I'm just go to the fight and then.
After the fight, I'll just whatever.
I don't know. I didn't think about it after the fight. I guess I was just thinking like the fight, And
so you roll up into the bar looking like you got fucking assaulted.
Yeah.
And we're all just hanging out with you, and people it's an interesting conversation piece.
Yeah.
Because you were literally in a fight like 30 minutes before.
Yeah.
Like with a former world champion. And
Yeah. Yeah. It was a good time, though.
That was a really good time. So we just got drunk, and then, you went home, and that was the end of the story. But seeing you at the bar in skin-tight shorts with a cup, black eyes, blood and sweat all over you, drinking beer, like smiling after a brutal fight was like awesome.
The thing is, like, the fight itself, the result, whatever, like, if you put in your best effort, I feel like you did what you could do, so just enjoy it. So I was just like, remember the first thing I said to you after the fight was, how did I get on the ground? But then after that, I was like, that was fucking fun.
Yeah, no, you did, 100%. Yeah. No, that's what I loved about you fighting, man. You always had the right attitude. Because, listen, man, like, wins and losses in this sport, it's just, they come and they go.
Yeah.
Right? But you had fun. And you weren't butthurt. Like, one of the worst things is when I did my pro debut It was in 2011, and I fought in Trinidad. And the guy right before, and I'm nervous, right? You know, because it's your pro debut and everything. And I mean, I'd had amateur fights before that, but no professional. And the guy that came out before me was just like pissed. He came in like kicking shit and like freaking out and screaming. He's like, "Oh, I lost this happened, blah, 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 blah." And I was just like, "Bro, like, what are you doing? Like, are you so emotionally connected to this? Like, you're not a world." It's just, I felt like it was a show more than anything, right? But you were completely genuine. Like, you went in there, you put it on the line, and you never know. A lot of people think like they have this bold confidence, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Listen, every person who steps in there doesn't know. Every person doesn't know.
Right. That
That potential exists to lose, and everybody knows it. Even though people like to be brash and they like to be like, "Oh, I know I'm better in every area, and I know I'm this, and I'm knowing this." That's the ego talking. Everybody knows that there's a percentage that exists that you don't win that fight. And I just love that you wore it. You wore it with pride to the point where your balls are hanging out at the bar because you're not even fucking, you didn't even bring pants and shit. Yeah. And we're just laughing and you're having a good time. And you were like, dude, you literally came to me and you were like, that was fucking fun.
Yeah.
You know, you weren't like, "Oh no, I lost. My life is over. What am I gonna do?" You were just like, you just had a scrap. Like, it was just a good scrap. And now let's go get drunk. Like, fucking, that's it. You know, I love that about you, man. And that's part of your character, which is so interesting.
Yeah. Good times, man. Like, I've never been the guy to like. I mean, I'm never happy because I lost, right? Sure. But I mean, the process is over. Like, no matter what, you still got better from it. Yeah. You still learned a lot from it. Like, what are people crying? I don't get it. Like, people cry and stuff over their fights and stuff. Like, bro, I've never been that guy, you know? Like, I see, it goes back to, like, when we were kids. I remember, like, guys would cry in wrestling matches, punch the wall. I'm like, what are you punching now for?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, you had your shot earlier. You missed your opportunity, bro. He was right there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, that brings me to what I was just going to say a second ago, which is, like, that's what I see kids do.
Yeah.
And when kids do it, I tell them to not do that.
Yeah.
You know, like, because I teach kids all the time. And if a kid loses and they freak out and scream and they kick their partner in rage or they push them or they run off the mat crying, or I have to go talk to them and be like, "Listen, you can't do that. Like, it's not fair to you. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to the people watching. And you're going to be a grown-ass adult and you're going to do that." Like, I just feel like it's more of a show than even really how they feel. Like, are you that surprised? How good do you think you are? Are you so surprised that you lost a fight? Like, the potential didn't exist. I don't believe you thought you were going to win so confidently that this is your reaction. Like,
no, what it is, a lot of people go into competitive sports or even especially MMA or something like that because they're seeking out validation, right? And when they get crushed with reality, it's like tenfold as bad on them, right? Luckily for me, I think I was probably the same, but I think I'd probably like developed a little bit of confidence in myself before I had that first like crushing loss. I was like, all right, can I know who I am? I'm like, yeah, this sucks. It would have killed me 2 years ago, but I'm all right now, you know? Yeah.
You're also the kind of guy that tends to respond to things with humor.
Yeah.
Which I think goes a long way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, dude, if you take yourself too seriously, is anybody more insufferable than people who take themselves way too seriously?
Yeah.
It's one of the worst qualities that people have. Like, if you just can't take a joke, or you just can't accept the fact that you're not as good as you thought you were, as smart as you thought you were. It's like, dude, I fuck up all the time. When I make a huge mistake, I can just laugh. That's it. What am I gonna do? Like, beat myself up? Like, jump off a fucking building? Like,
right.
You just gotta take it on the chin and move on. And that's one thing martial arts is good for. You have that disposition about you, which is just like to deflate situations with humor, which I always appreciated about you because the nature of our profession tends to be very serious, and it doesn't have to be that way, right? This is why I think you have a successful gym. You have a sense of humor, and even the training itself. I've been to your gym. I've watched you teach classes. I've trained with you. There's a levity and like a fun. It's fun. It's supposed to be fucking fun.
Yeah, it's supposed to be fun.
If it's not fun, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, you're coming, again, we talked earlier, you're coming in here, you're getting your ass kicked on your free time. Most people aren't professionals.
Right.
Like, 99% of people are training for a hobby. If you're taking it so seriously, it's just like, oh, God, just relax, everybody. Have fun. If it's not fun, what are you doing? You're wasting your time, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's get to the other thing we want to talk about with the UFC. So, I don't want to get sued, I should say. I might hear from someone's lawyer after this podcast, but I don't give a fuck. No one knows me anyway. So I want to talk about the drama at the UFC gym and the allegations, the alleged fake brown belt there. I asked you before the podcast if you heard the story, and you said that you followed it very closely,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of people in Singapore do, because this is like Law and Order for us, dude. This is like reality TV. If you're in the martial arts community, hearing stories like this, and our friend Alvin, your student, he trains with you, right?
Well, he trains with me, and he also trains with. We're both students of Lethwei, so I'm kind of maybe more senpai than sensei, you know, in that case. But.
Anyway, he came here and trained with me last week, and as soon as the whole story broke, I sent him a message, and then I was like, I want to talk to you about it, and then he came here and trained, and then we chatted more, and so I'm gonna get Alvin on the podcast next week to sort of have the whole discussion about this story, and just to set it up, and then I want to hear your take on it, Major. So. Alvin released this Facebook post that kind of went viral. I guess for Singapore, you would call it viral, about this instructor that the UFC gym hired, and they were questioning he was wearing a brown belt, right? And everybody was questioning his technique, and it wasn't him. It wasn't him necessarily. There were older posts, and there was a Reddit post that got put on maybe last week that kind of went viral again. And I actually went through that, and I saw that there were older posts about this guy, even before Alvin posted anything.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was not him. So there were other people that were commenting that saying that I'm not going to name them because I don't want to get into that.
Yeah, there's other like Facebook groups that I'm in, like Jiu-Jitsu Facebook, like Jiu-Jitsu Singapore kind of groups, and they're posting about this guy months ago. Like this guy, it's like an ongoing thing with this guy.
So I think that's a really important point to mention because Alvin is not the person who broke the story. His post, for whatever reason, kind of went viral, and I guess that got the UFC gym's attention.
Right.
And then because of that, he was talking about how this person's not qualified. And I'm going to make a few points before we go any further. And the first point is, just because a black belt signs off on a certificate does not mean that your skills pay the bills. And this guy released a copy of his certificate saying that he got a brown belt and he had a Brazilian sign off onto it. And I'll tell you, without divulging too much information, that I'm speaking to the coaches that signed off on his certificate. I'm WhatsApping them to try to talk to them. And I'm asking them things like, not only did they give him that certificate, but what were the criteria? And how did he train with these Brazilians? And so that's just a little bit of it. But for me, the point is that this story had been going on, and you were on that thread, right? You saw those comments. The community in Singapore is really small. The instructors all know each other. If you're a brown belt, at least, black belt, everybody knows everybody.
Right.
We've been in this community for 7-8 years, and all the people that are posting on those comments, there are at least 5 instructors, highly qualified people that I know. And this guy's releasing technique videos. And you can clearly see that his techniques are not up to snuff, plain and simple. And he released the videos. And then as soon as the controversy started to hit him, he deleted all of them. And the people that say that his techniques are not up to snuff are people that I trust. They're people that are qualified to actually make that decision. And it was universal. I have not found a single person that trained with that guy that can vouch for him. Not a single one. And I just want to get your take on... And one more thing, just to give the story its full parameters. So Alvin released this, and then the UFC gym, in a terrible PR move, decided that they were going to say, you're going to hear from our lawyer for him releasing the information. And they got really shitty with him and saying, okay, let you laugh now, but you'll hear from our lawyer soon.
On his public post.
Yeah, and it was the UFC gym Singapore that posted it.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, what a PR disaster. This is the entire martial arts community in Singapore going out against this guy. And your move is to cover your gym's name, criticize him, and say you're going to see our lawyer? Bitch move.
Yeah, for sure. It's just not a smart move, you know? It's not a smart move at all. But
so what's your take on this?
Okay, so here's the thing, man. Like, I know we're the guys, like, when somebody like that steps up, right? It's like, we've been in this for, 15 years? You and I were purple belts at the same time. We're brown belts at the same time. Like, we probably should have been black belts at the same time. But, like, I'm coming up on my first degree already, and this guy is sliding into the scene, like, doing whatever. But here's the thing, man. Why is the jiu-jitsu community so much more on the ball with this kind of stuff? How many fake MMA coaches are out there that don't deserve to be there? Bro, I bled for MMA. to learn the stuff that I learned. I got knocked out.
Literally bled.
Jiu-jitsu, I got cranked a little bit. MMA, I got knocked out to know what I know, you know? And there's a bunch of guys who've never been in a cage who are teaching classes. A bunch of guys who don't know anything at all about anything who are teaching. And the same thing with Muay Thai. There's guys who probably like walked out of my beginner class and then opened up a gym, or walked out of my beginner class, went to Thailand, did a weekend crew course or level 1 teaching course or some nonsense like that. And they're teaching people now, you know? Like why isn't anybody calling these guys out? There are more of those guys than with the jiu-jitsu community. Than with I mean, there's hundreds of those guys.
Yeah, for sure.
But jiu-jitsu is very, very protective of a criteria that doesn't exist. They're very protective of you know, like, okay, you're a brown belt, I'm a brown belt, but what does it mean? We're from 2 different schools, right? Like, this school has
There's
this
an
criteria.
objective measure, though, right? This is the point.
Okay, so what's the objective measure? What is universally a brown belt? Because I only have one objective measure, and that's for a black belt. And to me, a black belt should know across the board how to tap to any submission. That's why it's bullshit that they don't have heel hooks in IBJJF. Just putting that out there.
By the way,
Just
that's
saying.
a beautiful thing you just said.
Yeah.
That's the number 1 criteria.
Yeah.
That's how I know that you're a fucking qualified instructor. That's a really poignant and smart thing that you just said.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, and to just pigtail on that, the community, when the jiu-jitsu community speaks, people should listen, because this community is so insular, right? Everybody knows everybody. By the time you got to your brown belt, you've been training for 8, 10 years, like whatever the number is, right? A long time.
Right.
And we all know each other. And, you know, I see, for example, just shout out a few names. I saw my hair commenting on that thread.
Yeah.
And then I commented on that thread. And then I saw some people that I used to train at Evolve with commenting on that thread. And then I know people that were at the UFC gym. In fact, one of my students, I think I can say his name, Misha. Do you know Misha, the Russian?
Yeah.
You know Misha.
Yeah.
I just gave him his purple belt like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, right on.
But he was a 7-year blue belt or something. Like, he trained at the UFC gym. And all of these people, and then the instructor currently at Trifecta, he's a brown belt guy, a Brazilian guy. Mm-hmm. I know he's good. He trained at the UFC gym. You can see them in pictures together. All of these people were there. Not a single one of them ever trained with him. They were there. They trained there full time. And no one ever rolled with this guy. The word is that he would only roll with white belts or girls, and he would never roll with anybody. How in the world is this guy a brown belt in Singapore and nobody at this high level has trained with him? There's not a single person that's not a white belt or that's not some UFC gym person that has commented on it and vouched for this guy's quality. That is my number 1 red flag there.
That's pretty suspect.
Because everybody trains together. Everybody trains together.
But there's evolved black belts that none of us have rolled with.
That's true. But,
And they're obviously, some of them are pretty legit.
Yeah, there's people that can vouch for them.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I guess. But they're own students, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, you can see that they're legit. Like you can watch them roll. And
right.
Yeah.
If they put up a technique video, it's not bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's number 1.
Yeah.
And then, so the community itself, if they make a decision or they react in a certain way, just that alone, this is the point with the UFC gym and their terrible PR response. If the whole community collectively can agree, even the blue belts and purple belts who are not experts can see that there's something that's not right about this, and your response is you're going to hear from a lawyer soon. Listen, that's a whole community. That's like hundreds of years of collective experience. In that one post that Alvin put on, the black belts, the brown belts, the purple belts, that we're all saying that this guy's techniques are not up to snuff. That's hundreds of years of collective wisdom that are saying that this guy's not there. And then to have that terrible PR response just makes your point that much worse. You know?
Yeah.
And then on top of this, like, the point has seemed to shift from, is he a legitimate brown belt? In other words, did a black belt give him his brown belt? To, is he a qualified brown belt? And I think that's an important distinction to make, because this will lead me to my next point, which I want to talk about, which is open source jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And open source jiu-jitsu, for people that don't know, is like, I can give you an example, right? My gym, Stronghold, is we're affiliated with the Jiu-Jitsu Brotherhood. And there are lots of open source jiu-jitsu. A really common one is Globetrotters. Mm-hmm. Right, Globetrotters is a open source. BJJ Brotherhood is open source. And the purpose of open source jiu-jitsu is to get people who don't have black belts around them to be able to promote them through the ranks, to be able to advance them and grow their gym. So I'll give you a personal story. I was with GF Team for a long time, right? When I was with Trifecta, I was with GF Team. And basically the Trifecta that I had been a part of had mismanaged everything into the ground and pissed off all of the GF Team guys that were here. And a bunch of them left. And by a bunch of them, all of them. All of them had left. And only 2 had stayed, me and Marcelo, right? And I'd only stayed for like a couple months. I left 2 months later. And when everyone left, our gym was told we could no longer be part of GF Team. Now, I was a 4-stripe brown belt. I'd been a 4-stripe brown belt for years already. At that point, 2 years. So I'm on the border, and I'd been a full-time instructor. So I'm on the border of getting my black belt, and then I basically get told that I can't be a part of GF Team anymore. And on top of that, Trifecta wasn't paying me, so I had to move. And then when I moved to a GF Team gym, thinking that it's good, the connection's there, right? Like I'm GF Team, and then I moved to a GF Team gym. And then I found out that the instructor there didn't know that they were, I'll just fucking say his name, Pedro Falbo, didn't know, he's the head of GF Team Asia. He didn't know that I was moving to Malaysia. And me coming there was apparently a surprise to him. And he got pissed off because I was basically going to replace him. Even though the people that own Clinch, the gym that I went to, said, you can be like the figurehead. He's going to, because he wasn't teaching the classes. He was sending people in. He was sending blue belts to teach his classes that blue belts were in. Right? He just stopped showing up. And so they wanted to bring me in because I could teach the Muay Thai, I could teach the Jiu Jitsu, I could teach everything. And they'd kind of let him be the figurehead, and he could do the promotions, and I would just be the guy running the classes on a day-to-day basis, right? And when I came in, I got kicked out of GF Team. And then I sent my instructor a message being like, dude, what the fuck? Am I kicked out? What's going on? And then I get a message from the admin person of GF Team Asia saying that you and all of your students cannot affiliate with GF Team in any capacity. So I got kicked out again. And then I want to come here and open up my gym, but I'm still a brown belt. And I've been a brown belt now for 6 years, and I've been teaching full-time for 7. Even as a purple belt, I was teaching full-time.
Right.
And open source jiu-jitsu is designed for people like me, who, whether they fall through the cracks, whether the teachers leave, my instructors moved back to Brazil. What am I supposed to do? They all left.
It's tough, bro. You're a 4-stripe. Who's going to take a 4-stripe brown belt on as a student?
Yeah, exactly. And this is also the reason why it's really tough for me, because I have to restart with a new instructor 15 years into jiu-jitsu as a 4-stripe brown belt.
Yeah.
It's a tough sell for anybody, right?
Yeah.
So I'm basically in this position where it's very hard for me to, I dream about getting my black belt since I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
And then to find a new instructor 15 years in as a 4-stripe brown belt, it just feels shitty and dirty. Because you have this image in your head of like developing a relationship with an instructor, and then that one day they're going to give you the belt, and then it's like all of this culmination of work, and I'm not going to have that. Even if we're a Jiu-Jitsu Brotherhood, and I really like the head of our program. He's talked to me, and we're friends with him. He can sympathize with my situation. But there's just no doubt that I'm going to have to receive this from a person who doesn't train me full-time.
Right.
And this leads me to my next point, is that when you pay people to train and to give you belts and to promote you and to go through the process, you're going to get people like me. And I'll give you another quick anecdote. I had a guy, Ali, on the podcast, a 4-stripe brown belt also. He filled in for me when I went home to visit my mom. He told me that his instructor was a brown belt for 20 years. 20 years.
Jesus.
Same thing. He'd run a school for like 10 years, right? He'd been running the same school, but nobody promoted him. And then Nick, the head of BJJ Brotherhood, went in and gave him his black belt after 20 years of being a brown belt. Open source jiu-jitsu is designed for people like that, who slip through the cracks, who actually deserve it, and who have the right to own an academy, have the skill set. But then you'll get people like this guy who seems like he can pay people, Brazilians who maybe can't afford it. You bring him to, I don't know what the situation is. I'm not going to put a story on it.
Right.
But you have enough money, you pay people to come in, they will validate you quickly, you write them a check, they go home. And it seems to be like, to me, that is what happened based on what I know. Is that he paid some people. He got a new belt like every year, and no one's trained with this guy, and he basically seems like he paid for the rank. And is it legit? It seems like a actual Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt signed off on it. But
okay, is he more in the spotlight because he teaches? Because I know there are gyms that do belts by time or by attendance. And to me, if you do belts by time or attendance, you've taken the meritocracy out of it. And that's what jiu-jitsu was supposed to be about. Right before it went commercialized, was about the meritocracy. Like, you can actually beat some ass if you need to. You know what I mean? That's why this is better than the other ones. This is why it takes a decade to get a fucking black belt, right? But if you give me a belt because you showed up and then sat in the corner when everybody was rolling and coached the other white belts. What does it mean now, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I think we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of that everywhere, especially in commercial gyms. And if I'm not mistaken, I mean, don't quote me on this, but I think that is like a UFC model way of doing promotion. That's the way they actually do promotions in their gym. It's just like attendance-based. Like once you've come to a certain number of classes, you get this belt, right? But what does it mean? What does it mean if all you have to do is show up?
Okay, so do you think that there are people that cannot ever get a black belt because their skill level will just never be there? Or do you think if they show up enough, you will get there?
I think that, okay, here's what I think. I think that if the person's showing up, I had this conversation with Dan Reed a while back. We were talking about, like, who's the longest white belt you have that's trained regularly? And by regularly, like 3 times per week.
It's a good talking point.
Right. And we both kind of agreed that if the person had been coming for 3 times a week for 2 years and they're not a blue belt, that's our fault.
That's about the thing. That's exactly the number that I had in my head, too.
Yeah.
Was 2 years, 3 times a week.
3 times a week, 2 years. If you're not a blue belt after training 3 times a week, 2 years, no injuries, no bullshit, I have finals every 3 months, and I need to take 2 months off, you're solid. For 2 years, 3 times a week, if you're not a blue belt, it's my fault. Quite honestly, it's your instructor's fault if you're not a blue belt at that point, you know?
Yeah, because at a certain... Okay, so but blue belt is slightly different because we're talking about mastery, black belt, right?
Okay, right.
So I think your point is accurate completely, and I 100% agree with you.
Right.
But let's take it to the furthest degree, right? Let's say that you're consistent, right? I mean, I've met some students that train a lot, and they're just not going to be as good as some other students. Should those people still be able to get their black? Let's say that they can't beat the average purple belt. Athletic skills, maybe disability even, right? Let's take it. We can go in the weeds here a little bit if we try, but I'm not saying we should. But, whatever the case is, physical disability, mental disability, just athletically not there, but they train consistently, put in the years, but they can't even beat some blue belts or purple belts. Do they earn a black belt?
Okay, I think there are a lot of different jars.
And this is controversial, I should say.
Well, I think there are a lot of different areas. That you pull from, right? And you pull a little bit from each area, and you try to fill the jar. And once the jar is full, then I think you reach that belt. So one of them is like maybe competition, right? Or performance-based, right? One of them is maybe technical knowledge. One of them is like, how good of a training partner is this person,
Yeah.
Like, obviously, you can't just be a competitor and then be a coach because you're a great competitor. Like, if you can't explain things, if you're only able to do the moves that you do, and you don't know anything outside of that, and those moves require a large amount of athleticism, you're not going to be a very good coach, And if you're only able to talk your nonsense, you can't walk any of it, that's going to be a problem too. But you need to have some balance of those things. All right.
Okay, just as a professional, I'm not trying to put you out there or anything like that, but what's your take on this situation with a guy? You've seen some of his technique videos. You follow the threads of this guy. I mean, without saying anything that you don't feel comfortable saying, what's your take on this situation? What's your assessment of the skill set and of the argument for or against his brown belt? Because I think the argument is shifting a little bit. When we were young, it was fake black belts. It was people that just lied about it. I think as time goes on, it's going to be less of that, and it's going to be more like this open source type situations. People getting black belts from people that you can't really vet, and that they're legitimate people that gave them, but maybe they didn't train them, but they still signed off on their certs and stuff like that. Because as time goes on and on and on, you're not going to get so much straight out fakery. Instead, it might be more, which seems like this shade of gray. Which is like, doesn't seem to be fake. His instructors will admit they signed off on it, but you can see that the skills don't match the quality that Singapore community has deemed to be what's expected of a brown belt nowadays.
This is what we're seeing in MMA. It's what we've been seeing in boxing, right? And then the problem is that only people in the community would know that. I mean, if you set a bunch of guys here at a table, that guy, you and I, and then the world-class guys that we've trained under. We both trained under some world-class guys, right? You set them here at the table. Who's going to make the better argument that they're legit? I'm telling you for sure, the guys that I train with, they're gonna come in dead last. They're just too humble of guys, and they're gonna. I mean, they would smoke both of us and that guy too, probably, right? But they're not gonna appear to be as good because they're not gonna be able to talk that talk, right? That guy might actually be a better talker than both of us, you know. And that's kind of the problem. Is like where do we like how do you standardize something? How do you make it so
subjective, right? How do you
well,
standardize?
I mean, everybody in the community knows. Everybody in the community can see. Like, it's quite obvious that guy. I mean, you look at his skill set. I would say if you were to combine a standard and average it out on what each belt is, that guy would be not even a blue belt.
You think that?
100%, not even a blue belt.
I'm glad you went at least there. And you.
No, I went there.
I thought you were going to duck the question for a second.
No, I'm not going to duck the question. What I will say though is that their argument is that he's not the jiu-jitsu coach there. He's just a guy who...
He was the Muay Thai coach, which I think...
His Muay Thai is terrible, too.
Okay. God damn it, Major. I'm so glad that you're on the podcast.
No, his Muay Thai is terrible, too.
Thank God. He's also... Jesus Christ, his Muay Thai was bad. I saw him holding pads, and it just looked terrible. I mean, it's just... I'm glad you said that.
No, it is what it is, bro.
Even I was riding the fence more than you. I thought I was going to have to pry something out of you, but you just went there. I'm glad, man.
It is what it is. Like...
Because this is the integrity of our...
But the thing is, like... We've I wouldn't say we, but people have largely accepted shitty Muay Thai coaches. Like, there's weekend courses to be an instructor in Muay Thai. I spent 15 years of my life getting knocked out by fucking heavyweights.
Yeah.
There's weekend courses for this shit. You know, like, how big of an insult that is? That's like a guy who's gone to medical school and is a surgeon and has gone through his residency, works in a hospital, and some guy took a fucking first aid course and is pushing him out of his job. Yeah. Like, come on, man. Like, that's what it is. It's literally what it is. And nobody gives a shit unless it's jiu-jitsu. And the thing about jiu-jitsu, now it's come into such a gray area. It's like, okay, this guy had somebody, he obviously paid somebody to give him legitimate paperwork, but is he on the universal level? What is the universal level? Like, there's so many things, right? And only the jiu-jitsu guys get flared up about it. But I'm like, dude, man, like, jiu-jitsu...
You know why? I think why that's the case is because you've seen the the surge of these box fit, cardio fit, Muay fit type things where there will be some fucking white chick on the stage that's like punch, kick, knee, elbow, and you're like, yeah, and they're fucking teaching it, and those people are instructors. Yeah. When it's not the same as like martial arts specific training. And like, this is the thing. Let me just explain this to everybody who's listening. There's two processes that happen. One is gaining the skill set. Now, after you gain the skill set does not mean you are a good teacher of that particular skill set. It just means you have the personal knowledge. Your ability to communicate that knowledge starts back at white belt. So like, just to give an analogy, right? Let's say I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I'm not, but let's say I get one, right? If I get one and I've never done any teaching, but I'm good at applying those moves to other people, even other black belts, that's cool. Okay, that's the baseline for my ability to do those skills. Now, if I want to teach that shit resets at white. Teaching is its own thing. Right. And there are people that are on that spectrum are more naturally skilled at teaching, and some people are terrible at teaching. And you know, the Meows, for example, kind of have they don't teach classes. They have a reputation of they are world-class black belts. Make no mistake about it, like unquestionable. But would you want them teaching you and teaching 20 students surrounding them? What is their skill level to articulate that, to make their game universal to the heavyweights and the skinny girls and the people with short legs and long legs? And it's not black and white like that. Now, that's just which technique applies to which body type. That doesn't even include what's your ability to speak. Are you clear? Are you concise with your instruction? Like, just the fact that you're wearing a black belt does not mean that you're a black belt in teaching.
100%.
And just the skills alone does not mean you're a good teacher. That shit resets with how much you've been teaching. When I first started teaching, I was shit. But I was a teacher even before I was a martial arts teacher. Right. And I can tell you that was a real skill that paid off for me later on in life. Because I'm not a black belt, but I know that I'm a better teacher than some of the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belts that I've met over my time.
Yeah. Well, I think we have an unfair advantage in that sense because we were both teaching in international schools before, or at least during like our intermediate belt levels, you know?
I think that's why I relate to you so much. Because you're a coach. It's just fucking on you. Like, you ooze instructor, professor. Like, it's just something that about you, your disposition, but I think also that we were teachers first, both of us, while we were grinding. Yeah. And then we leveraged that into teaching martial arts with our skills and everything. And it's just something that You know, I can pick up on that vibe, and I knew that from you early on. And I've trained with some people that were wearing a black belt that could not teach shit. They'll try to teach a berimbolo in a white belt class with 10 white belts around. I mean, it's just like shit like that. Like, just doesn't make any sense. And I think going back to the point of these Muay Thai coaches, same thing, like holding pads like is a fucking art form, right? Like, and being able to explain even something as nuanced as the difference between what it's like to hit a pad holder and hit a person. Like, if you're holding pads for me, they're out here, and then the kicks are here, and it's very different than sparring
100%,
and hitting a body, right? And part of the coach's job is to distinguish that. And I think this sort of new age Muay Thai, box fit, cardio, that kind of shit has bastardized striking disciplines more than, say, something like jiu-jitsu, which requires a body to actually do it with you. Unlike, like, on the stage, step 1, 2, 3, elbow, knee, jump, skip, everybody, like, you know, that kind of shit that you see.
You can fake it a little bit easier in Muay Thai because you don't have to, like, who's gonna spar full?
You don't have to spar every day.
Who's gonna spar full power every day, right? So you can fake it a little bit easier, but we can roll. We can find out.
There's no question.
Yeah.
This is the thing with this guy, right? With this guy, who has he rolled with? Find me a quality person who can vouch for. Listen, seriously, Singapore community, find me a brown belt who can vouch for his brown belt, and I will take back all my accusations. Come train with me. Come train with him. Fucking, if he went to your gym and he rolled with you and you could vouch for his, would you take back everything? Would you be honest?
Well, I'd say he's still a terrible teacher.
But the quality of the belt itself, the
I've
skills.
never rolled with him. To be fair, he might be a ninja. Who knows?
But if he came to your gym and you rolled with him and you were like, you know what? Yes.
Oh, I would.
Would
I
you
would
say
vouch
it?
for him? I'd vouch for him at least. Yeah.
I would too.
But dude, he's legit.
I would too. And I think almost nobody. This is the thing about this guy, right?
He's a white belt in coaching, obviously.
Yeah, like, that's clear.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
But maybe he's got some super gorilla strength or something, you know?
This is the thing about this guy, right? If all those people posting on the social media, like, Singapore is not the type of place where people are trying to shit on each other for the sake of shitting on each other, right? It's just not about that here. Like, if anyone that's not a white belt or a blue belt has competed and actually can vouch for his skills, let me know. Hit us up or come here or train with us and we'll take it all back. And then the UFC can remove their fucking cease and desist or whatever, but the UFC gym. Because I just have not had a single person.
That's a total, like, rich guy dick move.
On my behalf? Or?
No. For like, in
rich,
general,
bro.
like you say, like, it's libel or it's slander or whatever. It's just like, dude, what it really is you've got more money to battle this out in court.
Yeah.
And you don't like what you heard. And that's ultimately what it's going to come down to, you know? Like, even if I was 100%, I could say that shirt is blue. And you'd be like, fucking slander, fucking libel.
Yeah, if I have 100 million to prove to you this shirt's not blue, it's slightly off blue, then your fucking ass is going to...
I can't afford the retainer fee. Like, I guess, like, you know, I'm going to have to, like, settle outside of court or take my words back or something like that, right? That's just a total bully move. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going on here. And
you see it all the time, though, because the systems were set up for rich guys, by rich guys, to stay in power. Like, otherwise, it would be like an impartial court system. Like, okay, we just randomly get assigned lawyers in the dark. And then that's how it is. And it's going to be settled in one day. But it's not. It's like, whoever can afford to pay more and keep the shit rolling more until the other person bleeds out, that's who wins.
I mean, you and me, for example, we're kind of homegrown gyms, right?
Right.
We don't have investors with millions. We're just not that, right? We did our work. We were teachers before. We saved up. We get people around us to help us. We started from there and we did it the proper path, right? But the point is like, when you get people that have the money to throw it, could you imagine if Team Highlight Reel, your official Instagram or Facebook, posted something like that, saying, I'll see you, you're going to hear from our lawyer, oh, you'll be laughing soon? That shit is so petty. It's so gross considering what the universal response was from the community that you're a part of. Yeah. Like, the UFC gym in Singapore is part of the Singapore martial arts MMA community. And to say that when the whole community, doesn't matter the gym, there were people from Evolve, there were people from Highlight Reel, there were people from Stronghold, there were people from all these gyms that were universally saying that this guy is not qualified. And then to have that response is not something that you and me could do without coming across as total fucking cunts. Like, there's just no way.
That's because we are a part of the martial arts community. Those people are not, right? So they have maybe like a high level of confidence. They're going to be able to pull in people on the boxer size angle, or just people who are not in any way connected to the martial arts community, which is pretty okay also actually, because they'll go there and they'll be like, this kind of sucks, and then they'll come to a regular gym.
Did you see my hair's comment about the UFC gym's Google rating?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw like a lot of the.
Go ahead, explain it real quick.
What's that girl? Okay, so basically,
by the way, I want to get my hair on the podcast. My hair, if you're listening, I'll tag you. I'll tag you in the clip.
Awesome, super smart, intelligent guy as well.
Awesome guy. Fuck yeah, I'm totally gonna get him on.
Yeah, but basically, what it boils down to is like they had like a rating of like what's like 1 something
out of 5.
Out of 5, right, on Google, which is incredibly low. Right, because usually what you get is most people, like, if they're gonna bother to rate it,
it's your community.
They're gonna give you a 5 or a 4, right? At least a 4, right? And if they're a hater, they'll give you a 1. But that's like probably like some bad experience they had, or maybe they're just a hater. But that's few and far between. Like even YouTube videos have dislikes for awesome content, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, they had like a rating of 1 point something, and then overnight it bumped up to like 2.6 or something like that. All these comments from Brazilians in Portuguese. I don't think they're training with the UFC gym if they're Brazilians and they're speaking Portuguese. But that's just my personal.
All the Brazilians going to UFC gym Singapore randomly to bump up their score. I'm sure that's what
rating
happened.
at the same exact time within the same exact hour.
Right after all of this controversy hits.
Right.
Somehow all this controversy hits and their fucking score goes up.
Yeah. I've been told, like, you can, like, if you try to do stuff like that with Google, like, I've never tried to play any funny games with Google. I just let it happen organically, you know? Like, I had Team Highlight Reel. We had one video that went, like, super viral.
That was you showing the different types of...
different types of rollers, right? We've never, like, played with the stuff, like, create bots to like our stuff. None of that weird stuff, because I had a friend who was like, dude, if you ever do that and you get caught, like, you'll be on the blacklist for Google, and you won't be able to run a business anymore, you know? So I'm just curious, like, we'll just see how that plays out, I guess.
No, that video went viral because your personality is in it. That's what I mean, like, when I see that your personality in your gym is just, it flows. Like, when I saw that video, I saw how many views did it get? You know?
Like 60,000 or something.
60,000. I mean, I saw that and I was like, that's fucking major. Like, it's you, which is why it was so popular. Yeah. And I just knew when I saw it that there's no bullshit attached to that. There's no bots. Like, that's just organic growth coming from a fucking funny video that you made, you know? Yeah. But yeah, that was hilarious with that UFC gym, and their rating somehow went up despite all of this shit. And then, there's some bullshit going on.
Yeah, who knows, man? I think, obviously, I don't think that overnight, it doesn't seem very plausible that overnight a bunch of people just woke up like, you know what I really like? UFC gym.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that happened.
Five.
I don't think that happened, Like, there's times when you, like, okay, there are times when you get surges when you're like, you talk to your students, you're like, hey, like, do us some good and, like, give us an honest review. Yeah. That's all you say. You don't say, I'm going to give you anything
Please give me 5 stars and get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, nothing like that. Anymore. Just like, hey, man, can you make a review? Like, just an honest review, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, like, they're probably going to give you a good review. They're your students that have been there. They keep coming back. Like, they don't. Sure. You're not locking them into anything, right? So, yeah, they give you a good review. But this one is a little bit strange because all these reviews are in Portuguese.
Yeah. I like how he pointed that out. My hair is so funny, dude. His fucking posts always make me laugh. Yeah. He's sharp, man. You can just tell that guy's sharp. Definitely want to get him. Is he still a brown belt?
He's still a brown belt.
He should be a black belt probably too.
Yeah. He's slick, bro.
He beat me in a competition.
Did he?
Yeah, he's slick. He's slick for sure. Yeah, he's a good dude, man. I'm gonna get him on the podcast for sure.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I think we'll wrap. How long are we gone? We're gone. Are we 2+ hours?
Yeah, 2 hours.
Fuck yeah.
All right.
Nice, man.
Yeah, good.
All right. Well, let's. You got anything else you want to hit on before we? Listen. I can go. If you got anything you want to talk about, I'm willing. I'm drunk. I'm feeling good.
Drunk and feeling good.
I don't know if I'm rambling or what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm starting to swear all the time.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we better call it a day before we go to jail.
Yeah, we were talking about some shit in the break that is not due for public consumption.
Right?
We were saying some straight up offensive shit. Yeah, I'm good too, man. We can continue to drink after this though, and then we can get a little dirty again.
Yeah, right.
Start saying shit that these people can't hear because we'll go to jail. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
All right, everybody. So this is what episode was
8.
on?
8. Lucky number 8.
See, I'm drunk. I don't know what the hell's going on anymore.
Yeah.
This is Stronghold Podcast, episode 8. Major, give him your shit, dude. Highlight reel, plug that shit.
Highlight reel? Like, so how do you plug it? Like how?
I don't know, your social media, your Instagram,
Team Highlight Reel,
your business, your
teamhighlightreel.com, Team Highlight Reel SG on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a cool? I want to ask you because I feel like I talk too much on these fucking things, and half the time it's because I'm drunk. So I wanted to ask you: do you have a cool story or anecdote of like training or with me or with anyone or that you want to give before we bounce? Because I just want to ask more questions. I was told to give that as a note that I should ask more questions. I think it's a good one.
I see probably one of my favorite training memories with you specifically was the fact that you've got that really good guillotine, right? And but I've got I consider myself a master of poker. I don't play poker, but I consider myself a master of poker. And a lot of times you'd catch that guillotine and it'd be on, bro. It would be totally on. But I would just kind of
show that face to the camera. Yeah, because that was your fucking face. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Keep a cocky face, and you're like, you let go, and you're like, and then afterwards I'd be like, hey man, you fucking had that guillotine. I was totally just playing poker face, But then you kind of caught on to what I was doing.
Yeah. I was getting ready to say, I hope you'll continue the next story because the next story I learned. I had you in a submission and you were like looking at me like, no big deal. And I'm like, fuck you. I am not letting go this time.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great story. Yeah, that's how we were training it. That was for Boku. Right?
Yeah, it was for Boku.
Yeah.
That was a fun camp, man.
Dude, that was one of the most fun camps I ever had. That whole experience was excellent. That's why I definitely wanted you on the podcast. But you've got a poker face. I still tell that story to this day. I had you dead to rights. Yeah. And I knew I had you dead to rights.
Oh, for sure.
But then I looked down at you and you're like, you look bored. You're just like, whatever, man. And
losing consciousness. And I'm just 100% losing consciousness.
And I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me? And then my arms start to gas. And, you get to that point when you're applying a submission where you have to make a decision. There's a trade-off, right? You're like, okay, there's still 3 minutes to go in this round. If I burn my arms out now, he's on top of me. I'm going to get punched in the fucking head.
Right.
But I feel like it, and I don't know. And then I just gave up because I wanted to save myself. And then I'm getting wrecked in the head and shit.
Yeah.
And then the next time I managed to get you in a decent bite, I was like, I'm going to go all out. I don't care if you look bored. I don't care if you're disinterested.
I shouldn't have showed my hand. That's the problem. I showed my hand.
Your mistake with your poker face was telling me you had a poker face.
Right, yeah. Yeah, the funny thing is I flip it around. I do the other thing. Like sometimes if the choke's not on, I'll start making wheezing noises. And then I'll get them to burn their arms out.
Oh,
yeah.
Genius, see?
Yeah.
That's how you're a black belt, man.
Yeah.
That's just how I know you're a fucking black belt. It's a fact. Dude, this was awesome.
It's great.
I really enjoyed this. Let's do it again. You're invited anytime, man. I'm always happy to do this.
Let's do it.
I think every time I talk to you, you have really useful insights. You just have wisdom that's unlike some people from UFC gyms that's gained over years of experience and just real talking to real. I can see it when you talk, when you train. Your gym is one of the most successful in Singapore. I think with the amount of time given, it's probably the most. I see your classes, dude. That shit is full. Like you've expanded even in just a couple years. Like now owning a gym, I can see the struggles like from a first-hand basis of what it's like to be a gym owner. It's not easy. And we were talking before the podcast about how, I'm not trying to suck your dick, dude. I'm just saying. We were talking before the podcast about the struggles. And I remember when you first opened up Highlight Reel and going to get drinks and shit. And you were just like strapped and you were working 7 days a week and you were just struggling. And I'm kind of in that spot now. And then now to see you be successful, it's like one of those things where I just can see, if I keep focused and I work, I can see that it's possible, because you burst on the scene, bro. I remember you fighting in one and calling your team Highlight Reel because Evolve and they wouldn't let you rep Juggernaut back in the day.
Yeah.
And so you called yourself Team Highlight Reel before you ever even opened a gym.
That was actually a reference to something even older, though.
So give us that story.
Okay, so it was, I think it was probably, 2012, 2011, somewhere in there. Remember the old Impact that Ron came from and Chris and
with
all those
the K,
guys?
right?
Yeah, with the K.
Dude.
So those are my original homies
Keith
right there.
And Ron.
Yeah.
That was Chris Tang too, right?
Yeah, Chris Tang, all those guys. So
Impact with a K, shout out.
Yeah, and so now, even those guys are doing great, man. Like even Hong Yao back in the day. Now he's the national team captain.
For wrestling, right?
Wrestling, yeah.
He was just here.
Yeah.
Is that the guy that was just here last week?
He might have been, probably.
Go ahead, and then I'll show you his picture real
quick.
Yeah.
But he was one of my students back then, and so it was just like him and a couple other young guys, Nick Lee.
Yeah. Shout outs, dude. Shout outs.
Yeah. So we were doing we were training MMA, but they didn't really want to have MMA because MMA is not profitable because it's fucking hard. and it's uncomfortable. You know,
And it takes so much diversity of skills.
Yeah, it does. People want to do jiu-jitsu because they don't want to get hit. People want to do Muay Thai because they just want to sweat. But like when you go deeper into it, nobody wants to do MMA because it's fucking hard. So I was like, all right, guys, fuck it, man. Like, this is my passion. Like, I don't care if I'm getting paid for it or not. Like, meet me at this off-peak time. We'll train. I'm like, so they're like, all right, so is it like a class? And I'm like, no, it's not a class, man, because like they're letting me like teach you guys here.
You were a purple belt at that point?
Yeah. I was like, but you know, this is not really Impact. This is more us, bro. This is just us. Like, this is not a part of a official curriculum or anything that's being paid for. This is just us.
Just friends getting together training, right?
Yeah, just friends getting together training. And like, so like, what do you want to call it? What do you want to call it? I'm like, I don't know, man. I feel like we're kind of this is kind of like the highlight of the gym to me. Like, oh, like when we're on the highlight reel. I'm like, yeah, we're like basically team highlight reel. They're like, oh yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah. Like, no, it's kind of stuck, you know. We're like team highlight reel, like the highlight of your week, the highlight of your day, the highlight of your existence, you know. So it was kind of what it was. We always like the flashy shit, you know.
Fuck yeah. No, I love that about you. I remember even when you were training for Boku, like you were always keen to do like 5 to 10% of your training at the end. You're doing wheel kicks and you're doing. We're fucking around.
Yeah.
You're talking about jumping off the cage and just playing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, even like when I would roll with you, I always found that like first of all, your traditional jiu-jitsu is really great, but when I rolled with you personally, I always found you most difficult in the
weird positions.
the weird positions.
Yeah.
You had a fucking flavor about you. It's just you had this X factor that was unique to everybody that you roll with. You know, like if you roll with Brazilians, even if they fuck you up, you're getting the classic Brazilian.
Yeah.
You would do weird shit that is hard to train for, that people don't do, and it would just catch you off guard. And like all the times that you would catch me in a submission or something, it was just like fucking weird, and I'd never been caught like that.
Yeah.
It's like the times that you submitted me was in shit I'd never been submitted with before. So I always, that sticks in your brain. Yeah. And I thought about it many times before we would train. I'm like, fuck this guy. He's always catching me with weird shit.
Yeah.
But that's a beautiful story, man. That's fucking awesome because the name suits you. It suits your style. It suits your gym perfectly. And it's a fucking cool story. Even going back from when you were purple belt at Impact with a K to see you now, it's fucking awesome, man. Yeah. All right, guys.
All right.
Good stuff. Stronghold Podcast. Find us, share us. If you enjoyed it, please share my shit because I'm desperate. Just share. If you like it, please share Stronghold Podcast at Gmail if you want a message, if you want to come on the podcast. Lucas Leisure, Instagram, Facebook, Team Highlight Reel. If you're in Tanjong Pagar, train with this motherfucker. Peace out, everybody. Cheers.